from the Community Advisory Board. Yes, we're being recorded. I have to click yes.
So we are going to start with a little music, and it's or an interview with Nina Simone.
I think I've heard that about 12 times on KBFT.
I have a feeling that evening gowns are your weakness.
Well, clothes. Yes. I love clothes.
You love clothes.
Yes, I do. I mean, if you come out and you look the way you want to look, you will create a mood before you open your mouth.
Exactly.
And sometimes that can be enough to get your audience exactly in the groove where you want them. Like last year, I wore the same gown for a year. Everywhere I went, I wanted people to remember me looking a certain way.
Yes.
It made it easier for me.
What was the gown like?
It was a black crocheted fishnet jumpsuit with a flesh-colored lining. So when I came on stage,
Ooh, yes.
the illusion was that I was absolutely naked. I loved that.
Yes.
It always kind of got people enough, and they became mine immediately.
Yes.
Since I was 3, I've been playing the piano. I've been on stage. My mother is an evangelist, and I used to play the piano at her revival meetings.
Yes. You have one daughter?
Yes, I have one daughter.
How old is she?
She's 5. She'll be 6 in September.
I see. And does she play the piano? Does she like music?
Oh, she loves music. We'll sit at the piano when she's in the mood and pick out her own song. She dances fantastic, and she mimics me all the time and has the nerve to tell me when I'm wrong. When I sing lyrics that are wrong, she'll tell me.
She'll tell you the
She's
lyrics.
very talented.
That's good.
But it's fun to her, and I want to keep it that way.
There was one song you sang in Newport, the one that starts enlisting the various things you haven't got.
Oh, yes. That Ain't Got No,
Ain't Got No.
and I Got Life. 2 titles
Yes.
to the tune. It is from a new Broadway play called Hair.
Do you remember the words? Of course.
Yes. It says, I ain't got no home, ain't got no shoes, ain't got no money, ain't got no class. No faith, no mind, ain't got no God.
Okay.
Then the song stops, and then it says, well, what have you got?
I got my hair, I got my head.
So you get the 2 pictures like that. Really, in these days, in these hard times,
Yes.
is you must be grateful
You
that
need another one or just one?
you have your help.
I want you to put it in the freezer if there's room.
Oh.
And of course, the last
Bring it to the
song
freezer. All right.
was very beautiful.
The King of Love is
King
Dead.
of Love is Dead.
Now that's composed by my bass player. Dr. King was killed on Thursday, and Gene Taylor composed that on Friday. So it was completely inspired. In a narrative way.
Can you guys mute if you're not,
Why was he killed? It was bigotry that sealed his fate. You can shed your tears, but they won't change a thing. Will my country ever learn? Must it kill at every turn? We have to
the
know
video going
the
here.
consequences of these acts.
Thank you. Thought I was hallucinating.
Wow. Thank you, Michael. That was really beautiful.
Yeah, she
Welcome,
goes
everyone.
on to sing what's going to happen now the King of Love is dead. So it was just a little bit of music playing to get people on the call.
Absolutely. And a little bit of housekeeping. If we can mute ourselves, that would help, especially if you're not speaking and there's noise behind you. But we appreciate your being here tonight. I'm PK McCary, and I'm with Michael Novick. I think who you were listening to a few minutes ago was Serene Roberts, but we're Pacifica Fightback, and welcome to the November 13th Pacifica Fightback Town Hall meeting.
Yeah, so we have 65 participants on already. A couple hundred people have registered, but I think we're going to get it underway. Lawrence Reyes will be opening it up with an introduction of the speakers relating to the question of land back and missing and murdered Indigenous women. This is a month for consideration of Indigenous people and their sovereignty and the day of mourning coming up. Lawrence?
Thank you, and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Lawrence Reyes. I'm a KPFK Local Station Board member and a PFB director. And I have the honor of introducing our relatives, both George Funmaker and Sunrose, who is also Lakota, and she'll be commemorating the epidemic of missing, murder, and Indigenous women, and knowing that the media or anybody else does not highlight this issue, this epidemic of missing, murder, and Indigenous women. My first introduction as a first contact descendant of the Arakawa Taino people, I am honored to introduce my relatives. To you, my relatives. George Funmaker, Lakota Ho-Chunk, Native American cultural practitioner, for our land back ceremony and commemorating our current and transition ancestors in this time of mourning, plunder, and genocide that continues today. Brother Uncle George, you have the floor. And then I will introduce Sunrose. Uncle Brother George.
Thank you, Lawrence. Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. My name is George Funmaker. I'm an enrolled member of the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin and also Spirit Lake Dakota from North Dakota. But I reside here on Gabrielino Tongva land, also known as Los Angeles, Long Beach. And if you could maybe put in the chat the territory that you reside on, I think that would be a good exercise for you all to get used of acknowledging the territories that you reside on. And so a lot of times people ask Native people to do land acknowledgements. And that could be very performative, or what I like to use the term optical allyship. But what I've been doing lately is asking people to go beyond acknowledging the land, but putting in some work for the Native people in your community, locally or nationally. That could look like different things. It could look like you donating your labor, time, energy, also your financial support, especially during this time, November. They call it Native American Heritage Month, and also Thanksgiving. I think it's important for you to be a good ally, to educate yourself on what happened to our people, and not to partake in these kind of white supremacist holidays such as Thanksgiving. And a few of my friends, we started to fast during that day, and we don't eat turkey. We don't try to redefine the holiday. Some people say, oh, I'm not celebrating Thanksgiving, I'm doing a harvest feast, or they make up another name for it. But you can't redefine a holiday, institutional racist holiday like that. So we want to abolish that holiday and tell the true history of what happened to Native people. So we call on you to educate yourself and like I said, support Native people. That could mean paying Native people to do labor. Like right now, myself, I'm taking time to speak at this, but I'm not getting paid for it. I'm doing free labor, which is not good. And most of you are all older white people, so you need to use your white privilege to help people. And if that means paying us, then you have to pay us and give our land back. So I know most of you, some of you already do that, and you put in work for Native community, and I thank you for that. But I call on you to go beyond that and support us, and many issues going on, and MMIW is one of them, and the boarding school. So all of that is important for you to educate yourself and educate others, your white friends and your white community. So I appreciate the time, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Uncle George, for your very powerful words. I will introduce now Sunrose Iron Shell. Sunrose Iron Shell could be found on Woman of the White Buffalo.comcast.org, which is a documentary. That's Woman of the White Buffalo.com. Sunrose Iron Shell is an activist, an artist, a poet, a teacher who fights every day to help her students on the Rosebud Indian Reservation remember the Lakota ways in a world that wants them to forget. My students have been told that they don't exist, that they are brainwashed into believing that they don't need to connect to the Lakota ways, their ceremony, language. When she first came to the St. Francis Indian School, she was shocked to learn that most of the students don't even have their Indian names. Only a handful had gone to sweat. To the outside world, they are seen as unicorns, a rare breed, yet they have no idea. So I feel it's my responsibility, she says, to impact them for the next 7 generations to come, to her art, to her passion, to stay connected to our culture, so she can inspire these young relatives and bring them happiness and joy. So I encourage you to remember our children, our indigenous children, and all the children that we come across. We must nurture our next 7 generations. So with that, I also encourage you to visit Women of the White Buffalo for the documentary. That is a very powerful documentary. And with that, Sunrose Iron Show will be commemorating and highlighting missing, murder, and indigenous women. As you all know, just recently in the media, there was a European descent young lady that disappeared, and there were manhunts. But yet, these women who are taken almost daily away from their people, it's not even mentioned in the media, except for our independent media, such as Mimi Rosenberg and others from WBI that highlight that. So with that, relatives, Sunrose Iron Shell, she is from the Ogala Lakota Titawa band of Chetzi Nation, and she belongs to the 7 Council Fires. Sister Sunrose Iron Shell, you have the floor. And please put yourself on mute. Show some respect.
Hello, relatives. Wopila. Yes, I'm Si Changu and Oglala Lakota from the Ocheti Shakoi, known internationally to the world as the Sioux Nation of Indians. And today, it's very important to talk about MMIW. For Native American Heritage Month, I wish we were talking about something more fun. during these times, but because it's such a epidemic of missing women, and everything is connected. Even though scientifically, you may not see the connections, like they are connected with what's going on with the extraction for energy, for pipelines, for extraction of gold and uranium. What happens to our indigenous communities is this jurisdictional boundary. So let's see, we still have somebody making some noise. Can you make sure?
Bella, mute. We can hear you. I'm sorry, Sister Summer was on the show.
And the reason why we go missing is because it's Americans' duty. And this is a realization I came to after my college years. It's as an American, in order to be an American, you have to erase my culture. Even though you don't know you're doing that, you may not know you're doing that, but in order to live as an American, you have to kill the Indian. And so there's missing and murdered indigenous people who go missing, but because that's the American thing to do, nobody cares about it and nobody talks about it, because that's what you're supposed to do as an American. And so I came to this realization because I'm an indigenous woman and living in the city. For one big example that I'm always using is a white woman jogging. They'll be jogging and they're taking their run, and maybe they got their sportswear on. I could never do that. I could never run around my block to go for a run because there's a chance that I might go missing. So there's certain things in my own life I don't get to do, because I know I am 10 times more likely to go missing, and not only to go missing, but to be murdered. And it is because of that American duty. And so when I say that, maybe it kind of clicks together.
I guess you have it, huh?
Of course, it's the same thing.
Please mute.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sunrose. I will try to mute people throughout the rest of the time. Don't take it personally, guys, but I'm muting you. Sorry, Sunrose.
But what I'm trying to get at is that I and other indigenous women, we live our lives differently without being able to be free in our own country because we know of these statistics. If I go missing, the state government will not look for me. They kind of all of a sudden say we're sovereign. Oh, that's an indigenous woman. Oh, they're sovereign. So their tribe needs to go look for them. But in all reality, tribes do not have jurisdiction off of reservation boundaries. So how could they ever go looking for me? They just can't, unless the United States government gives them that jurisdiction or creates a task force to go looking for us. Now, Deb Haaland, the Secretary of Interior, she is creating a MMIW task force. So that'll be interesting to see what kind of jurisdictional boundaries that task force has. Because the reason why we fall through the cracks is because the state doesn't want to use any resources. They can use their own resources to go looking for indigenous people, but then that's where they stop and they say we're sovereign. So sovereignty is kind of hurting us in a way where we're sovereign, but we're not. So also another thing that is very that people need to understand is that tribes do not have jurisdiction. The tribal courts do not have jurisdiction over non-tribal members. And so in the Women of the White Buffalo documentary film, there's a theme where I talk about, I look at one of the cameramen because he's a white guy, and I tell him, I go, you could murder me right now. We are on the res, and you could murder me right now. We could have it on the film. We could have the evidence. We can have witnesses, but the tribe could literally do nothing to charge him. They couldn't even hold him. They couldn't even put him in handcuffs. So he can leave and he can be off the res and he can be gone. So perpetrators know this. And the pipeline brings thousands of men from throughout the country and builds these communities, this say trailer houses, and all this, they're called man camps that are put together to house these transient workers who then are getting paid like hundreds of dollars a day. So now they have all these resources, and then they know, or somebody tells them that, hey, well, we can get these women from the res, we can drug them up, and then they'll go missing and they'll be gone forever. And because as soon as they go off the res, the tribe doesn't have any jurisdiction. But then also, if they were even on the res, the tribe doesn't have any jurisdiction. Now that's a big problem, and the United States government has the power to give tribes jurisdiction over non-native peoples. And when Obama was president, he came up with the VAWA Act, Violence Against Women Act. And what that did, that gave tribes certain jurisdiction, but it had to be under certain circumstances. So somebody could come in and murder me and be gone, right? The same scenario, have the evidence and everything, and then be gone 1,000 miles away, and the tribe couldn't do anything. But now, if I have a boyfriend,
South 3rd and Hughes Street. Now I live on South 5th and Hughes Street. I moved 2 blocks.
Racial, please, people, come on.
So if I have a boyfriend who's not from the same res that I am, he could be from another tribe, he could be a white guy, and he beats me to a pulp, then the tribe can charge him. But I have to be in a relationship with this guy in order for VAWA to give that jurisdiction. So now most of the time, these murders and these atrocities against Indigenous women are from non-native men who are from outside of the community. And so the tribe has no jurisdiction over them. And so that's one of the biggest reasons why Indian women are sought after in human trafficking, because those perpetrators, they know this and they understand this. So Indian women are seen as a high prize. You know, they know they're not going to get into trouble for stealing us. And so we go missing 10 times more. 3 out of 4 Indigenous women will experience violence throughout their lifetime. And it is a big historical thing as well, because like I said in the beginning, it is that American duty to erase my people. And so even though we have all these laws set up to protect human beings, I should be still treated as a United States citizen, which I am. I have a social security card. I may have a state driver's license. The only difference is I'm linked to a tribe. And as soon as I'm linked to a tribe, that goes against me. And so they leave that responsibility. These investigators, the FBI agents, they're leaving that responsibility up to the tribe. And so there is a big epidemic going on. I'm not sure how much time I have.
If you could summarize, Sister Summer Rose Show.
So with those jurisdictional boundaries, that's what's really messing us up. But what needs to happen is that investigators and the state, they need to be held accountable to just look for human beings. You know, if a human being goes missing, we need to use all resources, because that's someone's mom, maybe sister, that's someone's daughter. It's not just a tribal person. And creating these task forces are really needed, but because those jurisdictional boundaries can be lifted, and ultimately that the tribe needs to be given their power back. And the reason why America doesn't want to give us our power back is because we could then charge the United States government for that land theft. We could charge, you know, we could do all these things. So we are held back even in 2021. And so there's a lot of things that need to happen. And number one, if you see the red dress, that is representative of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, which started in Canada as the movement. And the red dress signifies welcoming that spirit home, bringing that spirit home. And so through artwork and just even putting a red dress up, we can talk about that. And we can bring that conversation up and we can ask the why. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Sister Sunrose Ironshell. And I want to repeat, The Woman of the White Buffalo is a documentary that relative Sunrose Ironshell is in. Woman of the White Buffalo. The White Buffalo is a very sacred appearance to the Dakota and the Lakota people. And with that, I'll turn it over to the host. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
So am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm having trouble with my Zoom connection. So PK is the co-host. I'm hoping that PK can unpin Sunrose, because I lost access to the participants panel and most of the hosting functions. I don't want to disconnect because that'll end the call. So thank you, Sunrose. Thank you, George and Lawrence. We do want to point out again that there are questions in the chat about Pacifica's future, and Pacifica's future is based on the past that has to be corrected and overcome, and the current realities of stolen land. So this is very, very relevant to Pacifica's future. We will have two panels today. The first one will be looking at the recent delegates elections, and we'll have speakers from each of the nations, and then time for Q&A and discussion by participants in this call for about a half hour after the panel. And then we'll have to take a short break. We were trying to do a poll, but as I say, I lost access to my Zoom controls. My apologies for that. So we may not be able to do the poll, but we'll put it out as a Survey Monkey later on. And the second half, we'll have a second panel talking about Pacifica's future and how to secure it, how to rebuild our impact and our network to deal with some of the issues we've just been talking about, to transform the culture and the politics of this society towards liberation and towards justice. And again, we'll have a panel then of speakers from all 5 stations and another half hour or more of input and Q&A and chance for people participating in the call to share their views about that. So we will have, again, on this panel, 5 speakers briefly from each of the stations. And I guess we'll begin on the West Coast. I believe that Lisa and from KPFA.
Lisa and Adisa Armand.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Lisa Milos.
Yes, Lisa Milos here. Adisa Armand is with us as well. She is our newly elected, one of our newly elected LSP members from the Rescue Pacifica slate. I ran as well. I'm second runner-up. Unfortunately, we didn't do as well as we had planned. There's a lot of issues that came up. We sent a letter of what we consider to be violations of election laws, election rules.
Hi.
Could someone mute her, please?
I have the shot. Are you vaccinated?
Oh, yeah, I've had the third shot.
Please mute.
Did you have a reaction to it?
Can someone please mute?
It's Shona, Michael.
But, you know,
I can't access PK will have to do it because I can't access the participants
PK,
panel.
We'll try to multitask.
PK
Lisa,
could
just keep
some.
talking.
No, I don't do that. I'm sorry.
I had a reaction.
I don't do that.
Sharma, could you show some respect right now?
Yeah, they say it's strong.
Come on in, I have the drugs.
Michael, make me co-host and I'll be
I
in charge
can't.
of
I
you.
have no access to my Zoom controls. PK's got to do it.
PK, make me co-host and I'll commute people.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
So where is it at?
So everything's in here.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of a mess. I mean, all these.
Well, it's
Hello, Sharna Gluck.
I mean, these connections are.
Could you please mute? Hello, Sharna.
They're
Could you please
always,
mute?
You know, you can't hide wires.
Yeah, everything's kind of over
Is
there.
Perry
Okay,
here?
so let me take some measurements here and then we'll go.
Michael,
from there.
who's got to do it? Somebody who's
Right.
not, Michael?
Somebody who's a
Who
co-host.
is it? I just,
It's Sharna Gluck.
Still at 50.
Sharna Gluck, where are you?
PK, make me
yeah, I see
co-host.
them. I got it.
Thank
You
you.
can make me co-host and I could, instead of you doing both things, I could.
No, I have it, guys. I just didn't know who it was. And I can't make you co-host. I tried, but it's not letting me, Lawrence.
Okay. All right.
We can
I guess
sing
I
a
can.
song. That sometimes works.
I can start now.
Yeah, please continue, Lisa.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I ran on the Rescue Pacifica slate, and of our 9 members, we were only able to get 3 of us elected, 3 people elected. James McFadden, who was reelected, Danielle Borgstrom, who was also reelected, and we had a new member, Adisa Arman, who's here with us as well, who campaigned in throughout the entire community, and I would like to give her the opportunity to speak after I do. The issue, we sent a letter to the NES because there was many things that we considered violations of elections rules. One of them was that the debates were not even carried out before the actual election date started. And this didn't allow listeners to get acquainted with the candidates and the platforms before the start of the actual election. The first debate was also not aired on KPFA nor posted on a KPFA website, but rather on a YouTube channel. This actually was kind of weird because we were expecting like what the bylaw says, that the actual carts of and also the debates were going to be aired. No, they said it was going to be on a YouTube channel. So we literally had to go in front of KPFA and had a little rally in front there telling him, hey, put it on the air like the bylaws require. They finally did put it on the second debate. They did put it on the air. The carts were only like 1 minute long. And even then they cut them back without giving the candidates the right to decide what to cut out of it. And so from the get-go, there was also a big difference in resources. The KPF for Protectors seemed to have access to staff lists. They had access to, they used probably used the email list that they had used for their New Day campaign in order to bring out the vote. So we were outgunned. Basically, we were outgunned. What we could have done better is probably most of us could have gone out more. There was a group of us that did go out and speak with people, like Adisa went out into the community as well. However, we're talking about a large area, so we couldn't cover, the whole entire area. And the other side had like a PR person there, directly PR person. He himself has said it himself that during the campaign that he was a PR person. And so we were outgunned. That's basically the thing. One of the main things that I think we could do in the future is try to make some changes in the campaign finance rules and resources, because the resource difference was very big, a very big difference in resources. Yeah. Adisa, would you like to introduce, I would love to introduce Adisa Armand, our new LSP member. Are you there, Adisa?
Oh, I'm right here.
Okay, good, thanks.
Thank you, thank you. I'm Adisa Armand, and I'm so excited to be here. One of the things that I'm passionate about is community radio, and I must give a shout out to my sister friend, Elizabeth, who partnered with me and supported me and encouraged me, because frankly, I didn't think I had a chance at all of being here with the rest of you. So I'm really, thank you, Elizabeth. I wanted to publicly acknowledge that, because you have been so truly supportive. One of the things that I wanted to, some things I want to bring up is that while we were doing our walking and talking and sharing about who we were as Rescue Pacifica, I also asked some of the young people, because I'm really interested in why we don't have a diverse line group of young people. I live in East Oakland by choice, mainly because I believe that it's up to me not to talk about how to be part of the community that that it has always been in a place where people don't take it seriously because of systemic racism and all the other things that are there, but because I wanted to be involved with the people. I know every neighbor in my area, everybody by name, and how long they have been there. And I almost always make a compote of fruit to give to them. So one of the things that was really impressive that Elizabeth and I noted is that the young people did not care to hear about KPFA. They said, well, do you have podcasts? Yeah, but well, what other podcasts? Can you name them? And why is it that I only see one person of color? Well, they didn't see you, Elizabeth, as a person of color when I showed them that.
I'm not.
So representation and people who are underrepresented need to be addressed. What the other thing that worked well is the fact that when we did talk about KPFA and all the things that it offers, they became excited about the possibility of being a part of this great station. And so what I did was I gave them telephone numbers and people's names, who to get in touch with. And I said, why don't you consider being a part of KPFA? That way you can get involved and see where you fit in. And so there were about maybe 4 people, and they surprised me. You know, they really surprised me because they said they would get in touch with it, and they called. Here's the thing: they called me and said that they got in touch with the station manager. I'm not sure if the station manager responded or not, but that's what I heard. One of the other things for persons that were aware of KPFA, they said that they didn't want to be involved because of the conflict and the transparency, lack of transparency, and it seemed as if there was constant bickering. And they said they had noted it from 1999. And so I don't know what was going on in the year 1999, but they just made that statement. So I just wanted to share those few things.
Thank you. Is Janine Rohn on the call and available to speak from KPFK? Janine?
She's on the call. She just has you on mute.
Okay. Janine Rohn is the secretary of the KPFK Local Station Board, and recently has been, I think, also the secretary of the PNB Election Committee, and can fill us in on some of the irregularities in this past election and things we can do to have a fairer and more transparent election process in the future. Janine, can you,
I don't know how to spell her name with the G.
Jeanine, Janine.
I don't see her. Is there another person from KPFK?
Not currently. We can come back. I can talk about it a little bit if we want. From KPFT.
I could speak,
Okay.
Michael, if you
All right,
want
go
me
ahead,
to.
Lawrence. Sure.
I was
Go ahead.
I was the chairperson, but I would definitely prefer Janine to unmute because she did tell me she was on the call. But as the chairperson of the Pacifica National Board's Elections Committee, we submitted quite a few motions to extend the date of the record date of the election, to extend to have an extension. We also provided a laundry list of fair campaign provision violations that were not dealt with. We still haven't gotten, I don't think the National Election Supervisor has gotten her report out, her final report to the network out. There was a lot of irregularities in regards to the way the elections were conducted. There were people who were disenfranchised, I believe. There were some people whose candidate cards were not aired in rotation. We had to essentially address that, and we sought remedies and resolutions in regards to trying to make sure that those aspects of the fair campaign provisions, even in the bylaws, sections, Article 4, Section 6, where it says that all candidates must have equal access. Not one should have more resources, specific resources, and that was never addressed. I believe that the National Election Supervisor was overwhelmed. She used the local election supervisors to do work on the referendum that we were pushing back on. And as a result of that, a lot of the local election supervisors were not available to conduct the elections locally at each station.
Before nothing happened either. So,
You didn't press it.
Nancy, Larry, please put yourself on mute, Larry. I see you.
Sorry.
Okay, so anyway, so I'm let me see if Janine is on. Janine, are you with us? Janine and others, we opened the National Elections Committee to the public. We incorporated out of each motion or each resolution, the public was able to input on resolutions on the PNB Elections Committee. I was told by the chair of the PNB that that was an inappropriate way of conducting committee meetings. And I was he attempted to admonish me, and I did not stand for it. So again, I think the best thing that we could do is work on providing some concrete. I don't like the mention of reform. I like to call it enfranchising ourselves, enfranchising our listeners and our stakeholders in regards to that. Reform, whatever that is, it doesn't have a good taste in my mouth. But we need to develop resolutions to make sure that the farce that happened in doing this election does not happen again. That the resources be leveled, that we take money out of the elections of Pacifica. That's one of the things that we have to do. Got to make sure that everybody is on the same playing field, on the equal playing field. And we so that's some of the things. Janine has, as the Secretary Pro Tem, she took scrupulous notes. We documented concerns at the public testimony that we took from listeners throughout the network when we were having our elections committee meetings. And so she put together a catalog of complaints and violations, and I'm gonna ask to see if she's with us now. Janine, are you with us? Janine, Rome, are you with us?
I just texted her.
I did too. So Michael, PK, I'll throw it back over to you. I don't know if you want to do Q&A, whatever.
Well, we're going to hear from some of the
you.
other stations.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I believe Nancy Sabar-Naratomi was going to speak for KPFT. Nancy,
Yes.
you want to go ahead? Nancy, you have to unmute and you have the floor. Nancy? Going once?
Say something. Hello? Hello?
This is, no, not Nancy Lawrence. Nancy Sabar-Naratomi from KPFT. Okay, we'll go on to WBAI. I believe that Serene Roberts was going to speak.
Serene, can you hear us?
I can, sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Benuti is going to speak first. I believe he's on the call.
Yes. Okay. So thanks for giving us this time. I guess I can say in total that this election experience, first of all, it was very new to me. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was capably guided by the Justice and Unity slate, Serene in particular. But I still found that many of the basic democratic principles of transparency and reciprocity in terms of communication to and from the election supervisor's office, to and from the electorate, and to and from the slate was very inconsistent. So without going into every detail of those particular observations, I know, for example, some of those things have been noted here already. Many changes to basic communiques like candidate statements were edited and aired without candidates' input or even awareness, except for awareness after the fact. Many standards for statements or candidate standards were not communicated capably ahead of time or were inconsistently applied. I mean, many of these electoral standards, I think in most state entities, if they were observed by outside state entities, would invalidate most most electoral activities in any country. You know, this United States government has invaded countries for less so-called democratic principle violation than have occurred at the PNB electoral standards. So while I understand that there were, you know, pandemic related, technology related, you know, problems or obstacles that were unforeseen, many of the principled attempts to get around them were either just confounded or avoided. And some of those principled workarounds could have included communication, just basic listening or output to people that were prepared to communicate. I think that's how I'll end my input. My own personal, you know, anecdotal evidence as a newcomer was that, you know, this process is very much, the electoral process is very much an entrenched kind of activity run by people that don't seem willing or able to really welcome non-insider views or non-insider activity. That's, you know, I'm sure I echo a lot of people's feelings here at Pacifica and around the different stations, and certainly at WBAI. But as a freedom fighter and a Gen Xer who stands on the shoulders of you know, generations before me who struggled capably, I hope that BAI and Pacifica will take a better position on enabling those of us who choose to resist these oppressive forces and not mimic some of these kind of black box activities that are more emblematic of the state that we're fighting. So for those that want to see improvement, you know, I stand to learn more from you and fight with you. And for those that kind of stand in the way, I hope those of us that have been doing the fighting and wish to do the fighting will continue. So that's going to be the end of my testimony. Thank you all.
Thank you. And I believe Serene has some further comments.
Sure, and I tend to be long-winded, so let me know if I'm going over. I would just say that, you know, I've been through and involved with elections since 2003, when we first were doing the bylaws, et cetera, revising the bylaws. And while there are many efficiencies, I suppose you could describe them as, that have been introduced over time, that this is possibly the worst of the elections that we've had to date. And it's not just about COVID. We understood that this was going to be we were told this was going to be a completely remote operation from day one. But the very idea of censoring people's statements, we've always had 1-minute candidate statements that play repeatedly on the air so that members who have very different schedules and sometimes a lot of candidates to consider can get into what the person is saying as their representation of themselves. So imagine our surprise when we started hearing parts of what we had recorded as a message to the voters. Highly offensive and unnecessary. The cut was not made by local BAI management, nor did they request that it be 30 seconds, excuse me. So that was completely unnecessary, and it was not. So I'm glad it didn't happen elsewhere, because it's a wrong thing and a bad thing. But uneven treatment of candidates who are all running for the same position on their boards is also very problematic. We have no election violations, fair election campaign violations were recorded on the website, which is to say people made them. But unlike the last election, there's no record of the complaint or of a response to the complaint. We have an interim program director at WBAI who forwarded to the staff the request of one of the staff candidates that people vote for him and 2 of his slate mates. Here's how he opened his letter with, "I'm asking for your vote in the current elections. I'm paraphrasing that only slightly. And she forwarded saying that she didn't understand that it was related to individual votes for elections. The man began the letter with the words, "I am asking you to vote for me." Nothing unclear about that. No penalty assessed to her, no record that the complaint was filed. So I'm very unhappy with the election supervisor, for whose final report we have been waiting. It was promised on November 1st, then it was promised for November 5th. The bylaws say that it should have been provided by November 6th. And I pretty much have given up hope since the last time. I think it took her almost 2 years to get us an election report. But there's more to say, but I shall not say it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Serene. I don't believe anyone signed up from WPFW to talk about the election results. They had a somewhat more limited election. They only had 3 candidates, 4 staff, and so there was no staff election. And they did not reach quorum at the original date and required an extension, but they did then finally reach the quorum. But I think some of the same issues that people have raised applied at WPFW again. The election was launched before any of the candidates had an opportunity to get on the air at all, or even with candidate cards or notifications. And so people voted before they even had any information about who was running. Very unfortunate. There have been longstanding problems with the membership list, and some of that's on the station management at each station. They did clean up the list. Pacifica Fightback has also discussed the idea of a change in the bylaws to basically keep money out of Pacifica politics. A lot of these elections have been determined by who has more money to spend on emails and glossy U.S. postal mailers, and that's an unfortunate problem.
Michael, both Nancy and Janine are.
Okay, so let's take a couple of minutes if they want to add. Janine, did you? I'm not sure if you caught what people had said earlier. Lawrence ran down some of the things that were discussed at the Elections Committee, but if you want to say a little more about KPFK in particular, and then Nancy about KPFT. Janine first.
Hi. Yeah, I guess the one thing I wanted to add is that, I mean, I think Lawrence was being rather gracious to the NES because when I look at the weeks that balloting was in effect, so it started on the 16th of August through the 15th of October, that's 9 weeks. It actually took about 6 weeks for them, even after the balloting began, for them to start airing carts. And when they did that, at 2 or actually 3 stations, they were cutting down the carts from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. So this is without informing the candidates. And so, you know, when we would go to the PNB and we would have these motions, they were just packed with things that we were asking for. And, you know, it became overwhelming for the PNB to really address it, or, you know, it would have been great to be simple about it, but there were so many things that just weren't being done. So I know that I'm a big fan of the bylaws being adjusted so that there is, you know, there's no campaigning outside of what can be done either on the websites or whatever, because actually in one of our meetings, we even had somebody, we had a task force that was not part of any of the LSB committee members. So we had, it was open to listeners. And one of the women on there thought that the flyer, the mailer that came in the mail, were the only candidates. And so when, you know, if they're not savvy with the internet, or they don't have time to go to the internet, and they get a mailer, then they think that that's who they're choosing from, then, you know, the people that can't afford to do something like that. And for KPFK, the station that we're on, there's 11,000 listeners to mail to, which is quite a bit of money when you think about getting those mailers out. So I'm a big fan of that. And then also there's been discussion of creating a coalition, either within the committee, keeping the committee going, or outside of the committee may have a little more strength to petition the listenership to see what issues they had, if they even got the, got the ballots either by email or in the mail, so that we can help clean up these lists and make sure that people are getting communicated with. We had 3 GMs that were actually interim GMs out of the 5 stations. So they had their hands full, even because they weren't acclimated to their station. So if we can aid in trying to get those lists shored up, that would be a big plus.
Thanks, Janine. Let's hear from Nancy, and then we'll have about a half hour for other participants in the call. And I think there's a number of people on the call who ran themselves or even were elected. So, Nancy, do you want to say a little more about KPFT? And then we'll, PK, you'll have to call on people because, again, my Zoom app is not working properly on this laptop. But go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, I can hear you, Nancy.
Can anybody hear me? Oh,
yes.
Good. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, I will say quickly about PFW. Only 7 out of 14 were able to make a card that would be recorded, and the PFW people said their full minute was heard. Well, that's wonderful because the other 4 stations had their cards cut in half to 30 seconds without any kind of permission or the candidate's involvement. So that was nice. For KPFT, we had 11 candidates out of 25. So 11 did not have a card, 14 did. There was no station entry because our station is completely closed. And I pleaded with the LES to please help the candidates make a card, teach them how to do it in their car or in their closet. I even sent an email to all 5 stations, and I carbon copied the NES, and the NES complained on the email. Oh, that's not necessary. Why are you sending all these emails? All the candidates will be covered in making their cards. But that turned out to be wrong. It never happened. So I do feel sorry. And our forums at KPFT, there were only 3 people who could join, 3 out of 25 listener candidates. And the staff, only 2 made a card, and that was posted on YouTube. And that's not good either. I think for going forward, we should have candidate cards, candidate forums for both staff and listeners. And the staff can be put on an archive or like a YouTube, but not on the air necessarily. But the listener forums, only 3, and we did a live Zoom to do that candidate forum because we don't have a station, and we had a lot of noise, a lot of difficulty. It was first time I think we ever tried it, and Otis was working on that. At first it was very difficult, and then it got better and better at it. Okay, so
Okay.
I'd like to, if there's any time left, I'd like to give it to Janine.
Well, we're pretty much out of time on this segment. I did want to add about KPFK that the Spanish language programs themselves took the initiative. We have a big block of Spanish language programming, and they took the initiative to air a candidate forum that otherwise would not have happened. We did have one in English, but historically, the station used to have multiple forums with 5 or 6 candidates in each forum, so that all the candidates had an opportunity to be heard and all the listeners had a chance to call in and question them. And that's really something that did not happen in this round of elections. So I think, PK, if people want to get on Stack with you, either by putting Stack in the chat or by raising their hand with the I think the reactions function gives you a hand raise mechanism. If you can call on people.
Yes, I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it in gallery form because that way.
Yeah, please do.
That way, those that raise their hands can do so. Right now, I see 4 hands raised: Ann Garrison, Elizabeth Milo, John Dingman, and Bella DeSoto. If you are on the phone, I don't know how you raise your hand. If anybody can tell me that, Lawrence.
Star 9.
Star 9. Star 9.
Star 9. Okay. So let's start with Ann Garrison. Try to keep it about 2 minutes so that we can get as many people as possible, if that's okay. Hi, Miss Garrison. Glad to see you.
I just wanted to say regarding KPFA that the other side was very well organized. And as soon as I heard that they were phone banking, I knew we were going to get clobbered. Phone banking is the most effective strategy I can imagine for this, because if you get somebody on the phone and they're at their home and they are quite likely to be at their computer, then they can go right then. They're not going to have to remember later to do this. They can go look for the ballot and find it and vote. And they were obviously very well organized insofar as the staff election went too, because they obviously had a strategy to elect Sherry Gendelman, who is just not that well known among the staff. She's a long time associate of the Save KPFA listeners, whatever, protectors, whatever they're calling themselves now. And she started doing the Sunday morning music show, 6 to 9 or something like that, sometime back. But she's just not that well known among staff, but she came in way ahead. So I'm sure that was because they were organized and a lot of people were told to do that. Another thing about that I'm just confused about, and I'm sure there's an explanation of this, because I don't doubt Renee Peñalosa at all. But I know at least 5 people who voted for me. And so far as I could tell, I only got 2 votes. And maybe that means I only got 2 first place votes. I just am not good at interpreting those results. So that's all. I mean, well,
you did it right at 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Wait, what did you say, that I was in or out?
No, I said you did it in exactly 2 minutes.
Okay, good.
Really good. Elizabeth, Liz?
I'd like to cede my, because I've already spoken once, but I just wanted to say that Pete Ferruggio is one of the Rescue Pacifica candidates as well, and he said something is very important. Well, Stan also, who was out there helping us to speak with people. We were definitely outspent, just like Ann Garrison said. They probably used the phone list from the New Day thing. We were also vilified in mass email blasts, specifically me and Pete, because me and Pete were the ones who were, when we spoke, we would take that opportunity to directly address the issue of the attempt by New Day and protectors to take over the assets of Pacifica, and the lawsuit and things like that. There was also, they would delete the part that said that we're affiliated with Rescue Pacifica. And one of the things that I'm seeing here is that there seems to be one person who's talking about the thing that maybe the election should be more direct. I don't agree with that change of making the directions direct elections from members directly to the PMB. I think that the ranked choice voting system is good, and that's the way it should be. Otherwise, we could end up getting a lot of direct votes that are organized in the same fashion that would directly change the diversity of the PMB. I think that I'm sorry, I'm not very prepared here right now, but the Spanish programming, as a Chilean woman, I think that that's an issue that we really need to address as well. Spanish, to answer somebody's question regarding Korea, Chinese, Armenian, etc. Spanish is the, let's face it, folks, Spanish is the major spoken language at home in the United States.
That's 2 minutes, Elizabeth.
Thanks. Okay.
Okay. Next is Jim. Can you unmute? Jim. I've asked you to unmute.
Yeah, I can unmute. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right, Jim.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. This is important because this particular election to me was one of the most fucked up elections I've ever seen in Pacifica. And there have been some fucked up election processes from the start. As somebody in the early 90s, and there are other people here who were on local advisory boards, I see Mimi and other people, I was a strong advocate of elections and remain that way. And this was, I want to know who the hell was calling the shots to restrict the debates, because there's a lot of things I disagree with a lot of people on this call with, but at the same time, I think the ideas should be freely debated in front of the audience that we project to. And so this to me was one of the most screwed up experiences one ever saw, and has to never happen again. Okay. Because it is a travesty what occurred. And I totally oppose it. I'm glad to hear that people were taking a proactive steps with the election committee. I was listening to people tell me what was going on, and it just can't happen again, period. And how the hell do those guys get the phone numbers of people to make phone banks? I mean, that's not supposed to happen, that kind of nonsense. The people in KPFA. And, we were left with a situation where the most people in the listening audience in both Berkeley, LA, and Houston now are looking sort of favorably at the New Day, point of view because of all this stuff we know happened. So anyway, I'm all in favor of making sure that the election process is democratic, transparent, etc. And what just happened to me was one of the most fucked up experiences I've ever seen in Pacifica. And there's a lot of them to see in the past couple of years with the elections. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And Bella, good to see you.
Yes, thank you, PK. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I agree with Jim on that. Janine Ron did a Herculean job documenting, chronicling all the complaints from the network. That is an incredible job. We were prevented from continuing the progress of the elections committee at the national level. On our last meeting, we were going to hold a follow-up meeting, and we were prevented to do so under the pretense or anticipation that the NES was going to be submitting her report timely on the 5th of November, which of course this did not happen. At KPFK was a complete disaster. All the cards, and not all the cards were heard. I know mine was not, and I recorded twice. I submitted 2 1-minute each cards professionally. Once at home, I have the equipment, I know how to do it, I sent it in, and once at the station. Then all of this was for naught because one person was designated, I know who it is, I will not mention her name here, at KPFK to trim down all the cards to 30 seconds. Janine made a mistake when she said 30 minutes. She meant 30 seconds. So I'm on the task force for the National Elections Committee. And there's a lot of work to be done. So yes, a coalition needs to be formed. These elections are not the first ones. We have had 2 elections prior to this one that were just as bad. It's just that there has been a progression of worse and worse and worse. And these elections were tampered. They were tampered with. They are not.
Ellen, it's 2 minutes.
And I just want to say that people need to challenge what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel.
Hi, everyone.
WBAI, how you doing?
Good. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening from New York. So I was just elected to the LSB at BAI in New York, and I've been a listener for 40 years. I was a producer for 10 years. I was a worker for years. So my issue about this past election is that for the first 2 dates of debates, they had what they deemed as debates. They weren't truly debates in terms of what a debate actually is, but they were like discussions. The moderator asked the candidates questions and they answered them, but there was no exchange. There was no, like, I disagree with you or I agree with you, like a true debate. And after there were 2 debates, so-called debates, then they cut those completely and went to the cutoff candidate PSAs. And that was not good because they did not inform us that they were going to cut the time on the 1 minute that we already recorded. And according to what I heard, and maybe someone else on this call knows more information than I do, but I was told that there was a complaint from the management of BAI that they needed to cut the carts because it took too much airtime to re-air them, because they have to re-air them X amount of times a day. So I was listening to all the redone carts after they were redone, and I don't know who edited them, but whoever edited them really did a bad job because it was like they just put them on a timer and cut them off in 30 seconds. They didn't edit. Like I used to edit tape and I used to do it for the shows and I knew how to get the quality in and like the waste of time out to cut it down to time. So I just wanted to express that. And
2 minutes.
What?
Time's up. 2 minutes. But
just like the radio. Thank you. Thank you.
Andrew W. Andrew W. Can you unmute? Andrew. Going once? Andrew.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Sorry.
How are you?
Yeah, thank you. I was on mute, didn't know. Yeah, this is Andrew Weiss, KPFK Los Angeles, listener member, 30 years plus. First, I want to thank the Pacifica Fightback group for putting this on, providing a forum for us, for our great network, our great stations. In addition to working for reforms within, such as our bylaws and accountability for the election staff, I think there are 2 things we could do that would be important here. I think we need to involve, educate, and empower the listeners as much as possible. And 2 ways to do that. Number 1, I think most important would be to have our regular on-air monthly report / dialogue with the listeners from both the management and local station boards, so we can hold them accountable and dialogue with them and reach as many listeners as possible. Second thing, and I think we should also have that from our executive director and our staff at the national office at the Pacifica Foundation, to also hold them accountable and give our feedback to them. Second thing we can do is just what you're doing right now. We can step in, just as with our government, not wait for the powers that be to serve us, but serve the constituents ourselves, the listeners, by having forums just like this. We can hold Zoom events, we can hold conference calls and forums. Myself, I've taken upon myself with some other listeners from KPFK to do just that. We formed the Pacifica Listener Forum, which is an independent group. We hold twice monthly conference calls. We invite listeners, staff, LSB members, etc., from all 5 stations to come on and dialogue with each other. We just had one today. We've had
That's 2 minutes, Andrew. Yeah, finish your
We've
statement.
had we've had our management participate, and it's a good way to bring people together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good. Minerva Sanders.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I have been elected as a new board member for WPFW LSB. And the information that was shared earlier, and I also put it in the chat, some of those issues I also had, and I know others did. I think some people just gave up and just didn't even move forward with trying to push for people to vote for them. The one thing that I see is, as the last person stated, it's good to have a forum where we can talk and see what's going on at the other stations. I see that there's one thing that's real important. It's the people that we need to keep our stations going. So we've got to be able to reach out to the listeners, and whether that's meeting them at the transit locations where they get off the trains or buses or whatever, but we have to be visible and continue speaking with them and hearing what they want the station to do and be. And that's one of the messages I'm going to take with me to WPFW, because this process, I had to just figure out myself, or either keep sending emails to find out what was the next step in the election process. And I think we at our station could have had more people voting if we were able to let them understand that it's key, it's important that you have your say on who you want sitting on the board. And I'm sure I'm at 2 minutes. Thank you for the time.
You did really well. About 30 seconds less. Good. Thank you, Minerva. John Griffin. I'm asking you to unmute, John.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Oh, of course, thank you all very much. I would like to suggest respectfully that in the interest of democratic principles at Pacifica, you seriously consider supporting the recently passed revised bylaws, which were passed by a clear majority of listener voters. I understand the basis why the Pacific National Board is rejecting that, and it's in dispute, as you all probably know. So I respect, I'm sure we all, I probably differ with you in many ways, but I hope that fundamentally we can agree that Pacifica should be run democratically, and that these bylaws are clearly supported by a majority of the voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Janine.
Hi, I just wanted to add two things. One is that one of the things that we're hoping to get from the NES is, and from the stations, are the traffic reports of when the candidates' carts were aired, because I think that that's been a big issue too. Many of the candidates I've spoken to never heard their carts, never heard any of the carts. So, you know, it was a past motion from the PNB that those would be supplied. And there was only really 1 week out of the 3 weeks of when the request was made that they were supplied. So that's something going on. And I also know that Lawrence was kind enough to let me, you know, urge the PNB for that. And in that statement, I said that, you know, we are down listenership. We are down in donations, and the listenership is maybe losing faith in us. And this was an opportunity. You know, the programmers and the staff could have felt like, well, you know, we don't want to put these carts up. It's not going to bring in money, blah, blah, blah. But this was our opportunity to urge our listeners to get involved, that this will make a difference. And this is how we're different. This is how the radio station is different from other stations, you know, but it didn't really get looked at that way. And that's just a shame. And I think we can do better next time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Janine. 213-878-5600. You're unmute. You need to unmute. If your telephone number is 213-878-5600, 5600. It's your turn now. Going once, going twice. Lawrence, you're next.
Okay, thank you, PK. And I just would like to encourage our folks to continue to push as Janine has done. And you know, this the elections committee was an inclusive process. We opened it up to the public. We heard testimony. Janine documented it, which is something that, for the most part, most P&B committees don't do that. They essentially, anyway, I'm not going to say what I really want. They essentially don't want to listen to the public. They don't want to hear people holding people accountable. So, but the other thing I'd like to encourage is that we push to get those traffic reports. We push to get that natural election supervisors report, and also that we come up with some resolutions for this not to happen again. This cannot happen again. This is untenable. It cannot happen again. So whatever it is that we have to do, we have to pull together and do that. And the referendum was defeated because it was not approved by both class of memberships. That's in the bylaws. So I just wanted to state that to the gentleman that spoke earlier. Thank you, PK.
You're very welcome, Lawrence. Elizabeth will be last. Serene goes next, Steve, and then the 213-878 number has their hand up again. Serene?
Okay, so thanks very much. Lawrence raised one of the things that I wanted to speak to, and I'll repeat it a little differently for people who are less familiar with the issues. There were two referendums, which, by the way, cost the foundation, I think, upwards of $200,000 altogether, pushed by a group calling itself in 1 year the Pacifica Restructuring Project, and in the next year, the New Day Pacifica. They wanted to make some changes to the bylaws, which essentially ripped the community out of community radio. And whenever changes are being made to the bylaws that affect one group of listeners in a manner that is different from how to, I should say one group of members, namely staff members, differently from how it affects listener members, staff members get to vote on their losses, what they stand to lose. In order for such a bylaw to be approved, it has to be approved by both the listeners and the staff, a majority of both the listeners and the staff. So it is not true that the bylaws that New Day was pushing earlier this year were approved, because they would have disfranchised staff in a rather vicious way. So I'm looking for staff to be very active, and I'm looking for all those people who claim to be interested in labor rights to be supportive of staff. As staff, you have inside information on how the sausage is made, and listeners, if you will, are on the other side of the counter. You should pay attention. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to raise is that in Washington, D.C., there was an extension of 1 week for quorum, but it wasn't, according to what I've heard, because I didn't listen constantly. I don't live in the area. It's not so easy for me. There were not announcements on air saying if you have your paper ballot, you can still mail it. Or if you received a postcard, you can still scratch off your credentials and vote. It was, okay, wrapping up. It was only those people for whom the NES already had email addresses who were allowed to vote, who were encouraged to vote in that 1 week extension. So there's a problem with that too. There is such a thing as a digital divide.
Okay, we're right almost at the half an hour mark. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
well,
I put up my hand easily, Dr. Halley here.
I think that, you know, this was an organized.
I'm not, hold on a second, Steve. You went away and then you came back. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to stop and not let you talk, if that's okay. The 213-878-5600 number.
Oh, I'm
go
at
ahead,
2137-477183.
I'm sorry?
This is Dr. Halley at 213-747-7184. I raised my hand repeatedly and got no acknowledgement.
I tried to unmute you. I mean, I asked you, I'm sorry that you didn't get, but the number shows up as 213-878-5600. I can see that you are talking. Steve, do you mind if he goes ahead?
No, that's okay. That's
I-
fine.
Go ahead.
I beg your pardon. This is my second number. My mistake. I don't
Okay.
carry the before after.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Second. Yes, I'm Dr. Thomas Halley. I've been a member and volunteer of KPFK for many, many years. I want to say that I too was very disappointed by many things going on with the last election and how it was handled. Second, first of all, we didn't have the usual several on-air candidate panels. I've been a candidate in the past, and I know what the normal pattern is. Number two, at our station as well, there was the so-called trimming of many candidate so-called cart messages, and also the fact that it seems that very few of these were aired. And then finally, there seems to have been a lot of abuse, again, related to our membership list. And along with what Michael Novick had to say the other day, I think that list should be, the information based on the list should be sent out to the candidates. It should be handled by the station itself, and not, the list shouldn't be just made available willy-nilly all over the place. So very serious problems in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
This is, the way this thing happened is not an accident. It's not a mistake. It's an organized political campaign, a Democratic Party type operation. Let's be clear about that. First of all, the bylaw election was used by New Day to collect names, to collect numbers. They illegally sent out money to all members, sending money to them, that organization, New Day. And those people that did that weren't removed as candidates. In fact, they got elected. And that has been accepted by the PNB. That is unacceptable and intolerable. No accountability. If people flagrantly and illegally violate the election rules, they should be removed as candidates. So that hasn't been done. The other thing is that in the middle of the election, they removed the programs at KPFT of the activist Black Latino programs. That was interfering in the election. There was a motion at the Pacifica board to put them back. It was voted down. I consider that a problem. They don't take, that's interfering in the election, and that needs to be stopped. The agenda of New Day is to corporatize Pacifica, is to end the elections. I agree with Janine. There's no other network that has democratic elections in the United States like we do. So why isn't it being used to let the members know, to build support for that? And I think that that is something we have to build on, and we have to have a program for proper procedures and accountability, and actually for the election rules to be enforced. We had to have two protests at KPFA out in front of the station to get the election debates on the air, so that people could even know about them. They only played them once, one program. They should have been played at other program times when they replay shows at KPFA. They didn't do that. So there was a plan, an organized plan to prevent the members from knowing who the candidates were and what the differences were, what the issues were. That is an attack on democratic rights within Pacifica.
Thank you, Steve. You did less than 2 minutes. That's great. Appreciate it. Elizabeth, you'll be last. Elizabeth Milos, you're last.
Yeah, I find it very insulting for somebody to be talking about democracy when they're basically going behind people's backs to try to attain the assets of Pacifica by supporting those that are actually creating shell nonprofits that are trying to get the assets being sent to the lawyers and to get into receivership right behind the backs of the actual voters and listeners of Pacifica. And I'd like to thank the staff at WBAI and the other station that voted against the Pacifica bylaws. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And unfortunately, the staff at KPFA has been very badly misinformed. Thank you.
So this is Michael. Again, I just wanted to try to sum up a couple of things before we do a shift. We'll have a little musical interlude. I did get the poll together, PK, so I'll be putting that up. I'm doing it from my other computer in a minute. So
take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
You know, I think that we have another election coming up, and we have a critical situation at Pacifica in general, which is the decline in membership. And the fact that we are a democratic medium, I think, is a selling point. So I think we have our tasks cut out for us, which is to rebuild the stations and attract new members and new listeners and educate them as to what Pacifica is all about. I think that will require some of the things we talked about, not sending the ballots out until the carts and the candidate forums have been held so the listeners are informed before they vote. I think it involves convincing the management that they have to have up-to-date current lists of their own membership, which is a requirement of the California Corporations Code. And I think it involves keeping money out of Pacifica politics, some of the things we talked about today. But the key is to actually get people to become members and you know, vote for a different future. So we are going to be putting up a little poll about what stations people are from and what interest they have in some of these things we're proposing. And while that's happening, we'll be having a little music shared from a interview and performance by John Coltrane that was on Blank, but actually comes from the Pacifica archives. So give me a minute to switch computers and we'll do both of those things.
I have to leave. I have to leave. This is Bella. Thank you very much. I see you, Marisol Cruz. Thank you, PK, everybody.
You're welcome, Bella. And for those that are on the phone and cannot maybe do the polls, you're welcome to put in your email and you know, say who you are, vote that way, or we can send one to your email directly. We are doing a Survey Monkey. I think the data is going to be really important to all of us. And so a little bit of music, if you will, Maestro.
Yeah, I'm trying. Let me see what's happening here.
I also sent in a videotape of a poem, a song around the election protest. I don't know if you got that, Michael.
Good, Steve.
I got a polling error, so maybe it won't work. I don't know. Sorry.
My poll disappeared while I was trying to fill it out.
Yeah, it came up with a polling error. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it went away.
Mine disappeared too.
Oh, God.
I was just about done.
Where's the survey? Mine disappeared.
Oh, my goodness. Are you all going to say that?
Well, I'm saying it because
There
it
it goes.
happened.
It's on again.
Since you posted it up again, do we do it all over again?
I'm going to do it over again.
Mine was unfinished, so I'm doing it.
Is this Janine to the stack? I have a question about this poll.
Sorry, the screen share isn't working for the music. I stepped away to say that I got a poll error, and I had to end the poll. I think it restarted. So
I think maybe we couldn't have music up as long as it's there. So
okay,
let's do the poll. Janine, you had a question?
Is this poll just for this meeting, or is this something that's going to be distributed outside of this meeting?
No, this is for this meeting, and this is us, you know, trying to see who comes to
we are working on a Survey Monkey poll that's a little more elaborate than this one. It's hard to have basically these polls are only have to pick one single choice. We have another poll that we're putting together through Survey Monkey, and we'll be putting it up on our website and circulating it by email.
I think
to everybody.
Marisol Cruz, Ms. Cruz.
Well, I would be interested in discussing that with whoever's arranging it for various reasons. Because,
Okay.
and I say
Oh
that
my
because
God.
if there is a coalition that's also doing the same thing, that isn't associated with any organization, which I think is more advantageous, then people would be getting more than one email regarding this and might get confused. So
Sure.
I'm interested in having more discussion about that whenever it's appropriate.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah.
that's part of talking about the future in just a few minutes. Is that okay, Janine?
Sure.
Okay. Marisol, Ms. Cruz?
Yes, thank you for the time. I just wanted to say thank you to Michael, Lawrence, Janine, and the whole grassroots community coalition for the support. And the way that I see KPFK moving forward is pulling.
We're not there yet.
Oh, we're not there yet. Oh, I thought we were.
No, not quite. Yeah.
Okay.
We're almost
Never
there.
mind. I'll wait.
Okay.
But okay.
Hello, can I make a comment?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to say that I worked on the elections, for the elections for the bylaws. And somebody talked about being paid. I hope it was in reference to people working on these things, on the election to be paid. I wasn't paid anything. I did do phone banking, and my list was peppered with both sides of the issues. And I don't know, somebody was saying that they were like one-sided or something. And I found it easy, and dealing with the voting, there was a problem. I tried to get my daughter to be a household voter, and I don't actually know what happened, but I ended up receiving her emails, and I don't know where mine went anyway. But the voting was easy, and I was able to check it and make sure everything went in. So I didn't have any problems.
Linda, can you hold for just 1 second? You all, this is, we were only going to do this poll for 3 minutes.
Yes,
It's
okay,
about
to end it?
2.5 minutes, so I'm going to end the poll.
Okay.
54% of the participants participated. Thank you.
We participate via the phone?
So I already took the poll. Has it been counted?
It's,
okay.
we didn't title the poll. We'll have to do that next time, but
For the people on the phone.
if you want to see the poll, it'll be up for about 30 more seconds.
Can
Linda,
somebody-
you can finish your statement, and then we're going to go into the second half.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you very
could
much.
you-
Yeah, so
could
I am
you
very
say what the
interested.
poll-
The reason I joined this particular Zoom session was because I am very interested in the future of Pacifica, and I'm very worried about the low membership rate now. And I would like to really discuss or hear discussed.
Well, we're getting ready to go
methods.
into that part right now. That's
Okay, good.
All right.
That's fine.
Thank you very much.
Could you announce the results of the poll so that the people on the phone could see it?
Yes. Out of 54%, 86% are listeners. Only about 4% are programmers, but 10% are both. And KPFA has the biggest audience here tonight, 39%, KPFK 20%, KPFT 8%, WBAI 20%, and WPFW 12%. That's kind of telling. Did you experience difficulties with the recent delegates election? Yes, 47%. No, 53%. was not able to vote at all. Nobody picked that one. Have you participated in outreach, promotion, or other governance activities at your station or with your local station board? 61% said yes, 39% said no. Do you support an anti-racist or anti-discrimination platform for Pacifica? 94% said yes, yay. And 6% said no. I shouldn't have done that, maybe. Are you familiar with your station's community advisory board? 51% said yes, 41% said no, but 8% says my station doesn't have a cab. And would you be interested in running for your local station board or serving on the community advisory board? 47% said yes, and 53% said no.
Which reached a 7-year high, so it's on a 50-year high right now.
Gwendolyn needs to mute, I think.
That said,
Okay, can I get everybody to mute as we start into our second segment? Okay, I'm trying to mute people, but it would help if you could. We still have about 90 people that are participating with us tonight. Thank you all for giving us your time and your attention. And as we think about the next half of this, this is about Pacifica's future. And, you know, a brief update, you know, we've talked a little bit about over time, Pacifica finances, the need for money, New Day lawsuits, which continue to drain the coffers, current bylaw amendments, which we can always strengthen bylaws, but we need to be able to focus and strengthen our mission and vision. And the search for an executive director is crucial. So as we've talked about the election, what do the election results mean for Pacifica? Let's talk about what the future would be about. And I'm going to start with the list. And I wanted to start with James McFadden and Steve Zeltzer for KPFA. If that's okay, can you both unmute, or whichever one of you will go first? Who's
Maybe
caller
maybe
user
maybe
two?
James can go first. James,
Huh?
why don't you go first?
Why don't I go first?
No, James.
James, okay. A moderator, I can't go first. Somebody has their hand up. Is there a reason? Do you have a quick question, or can user two? Okay, I took your hand down. Please, James, can you go? Can you unmute? Is he on, Steve?
I didn't see him, but so I'll
He
go
is-
and
Okay, can we ask
Okay,
people
go
to
ahead,
mute?
Steve.
Mute,
Okay.
please, everybody. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for joining tonight. And I want to say that it's Pacifica Fightback that is actually having a national open program on the issues on the election and the future for Pacifica. And it tells you right off the bat, what are the differences between Pacifica Fightback and the New Day and Save KPFA Protectors, all these other people. The fact they can't have a national public forum of KPFA supporters and listeners is a statement in itself. So the future, I mean, we are in dire financial straits. I mean, that there is no question. We have to raise more money and we have to build up our listenership at all the stations, including KPFA. We're losing members and losing listeners. And I think the way we're going to do that is to really build our stations and develop a Pacifica national channel by having programming on working people. Tomorrow, 100,000 Kaiser workers, healthcare workers, are going to be going on strike. Pacifica needs to cover that. This is a historic struggle of working people, largest hospital strike in the history of the United States, and Pacifica and the stations need to cover it. So we're proposing more labor programming, a national labor show, developing CRD, developing the best Pacifica programming on Indigenous people, Black people, climate. We have to also fight for more local programming. The thing that we can provide that other stations aren't is local programming on struggles going on in our communities. Unions, workers, climate, housing, these are major issues. So I think we have to bring together this programming and get it out locally and nationally. And I think that the medium, social media, is right now, there are struggles going on in social media. Young people are using social media, and we have to start using social media and get these stories out. The workers are on strike in this country. Their voices need to be heard, and we have to develop links with them. We could have a national day of programming on Pacifica on these labor struggles and have their voices from throughout the country, and not only the KPFA stations or the Pacifica stations, but the affiliates. So how are we going to do that? We're going to be doing that by training people, including young people, and also, partnering with community access centers, with media centers around the country, and colleges, and trying to work with them to get some of this programming on. There are very few youth programmings at KPFA and many other stations. We've got to bring young people on, and young people are the future of Pacifica. And we need to get their voices about the situations that they're facing, particularly in education in this country. So the other thing is there are national issues. And international
Tori
issues.
Mercer needs to mute.
Okay.
Tori Mercer, please mute.
I muted him.
There are national issues that must be addressed, not just by local stations, but by Pacifica nationally. The rise of fascism. This is a very serious issue for the people of this country, Black, brown, Indigenous people, workers. And I think we need some national programming to address these issues. What is fascism? How to fight it? The climate, there should be national programming on climate. I think we need to develop using the resources we have in Pacific and the affiliates, and work towards developing national days of programming contributed by the affiliates and by the stations. We have many talented producers, programmers in Pacifica. So let's work together with them to produce the kind of great programming that can attract new listeners. And the point I want to make is the thing about in New York during Eric Garner, the march that was held in Brooklyn Bridge, 2 million people were watching that. It was streamed on live on Ustream. We need to capture these struggles going on in this country and reach out to young people, show that we can provide not just pictures and video, but an analysis with journalists and others, along with the workers and the people on the picket lines or in the streets. If we do that, we will get an audience. That's how KPFA became, in a way, a powerhouse. 60 years ago, many years ago, we were covering the free speech movement. We have live coverage from Sproul Plaza, UC Sproul Plaza, on the day that it was happening. Here we can't, today with all the technology and communication, we can't even do that. When Nazis are organizing or fascist 2 blocks from the station, we can't cover that live. So we have to rework our stations to say that we're going to be activists, we're going to be covering the struggles and issues facing all people in this country, and we're going to get their voices out. And that way we will get the kind of audience that I think we can get. Thank you.
I think we found James McFadden.
Yeah,
James, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can. Go ahead.
I don't know what was wrong, but at my, I had to get off that computer and try another different computer. So anyway, glad to participate in this. First, I'm going to just say something about the election. As Elizabeth said, we at KPFA didn't gain any ground in the last 3 years since I was elected the first time, and even despite the shenanigans by New Day and their allies. And I think we at Rescue Pacifica spent the last few years in defense and not building an offensive against our opponents. And I think that was part of the problem. We need to work harder at recruiting new members, and rather than just trying to convince the dwindling membership to vote for our candidates. So I think that's going to hopefully be our future course. And I think that recruiting needs to start now and should focus on youth for long-term support. With regards to finances and building community radio that serves BIPOC and expands activist media, first, of course, recruiting new members of youth will be helpful in finances and growing audience. However, I think we really need to think about how to make programming relevant to youth and movement and to various activist movements out there. And I really think this needs to be our emphasis, not only to grow the network, but to be a force of change, which is really the only reason to have radio is to be a force of change and to be resistance against the forces that are driving global pillaging and wealth inequality and racism and climate change. So I see Pacifica's problems as really part of a greater crisis of capitalism. And we need to, also just the problem of wealth shifting upward and the general transformation of education, information, media into entertainment, and which all seems to be possible by the manipulation of the public. So Pacifica must resist these financial pressures, to get with the capitalist, program. And Pacifica's boards really need to go after, really need to be careful what they do. And I think if Pacifica's boards go after wealthy donors by catering to their shows at the expense of community radio, or if we go after nonprofit foundation grants, as is being pushed by some elements within Pacifica, or even more frightening, going after corporate underwriting, then Pacifica as an independent network is finished. And we will just become NPR light, and we might be able to balance our budget, but we're not going to be relevant. And if that happens, and I think, I'll personally lose interest in the network. And it is essential that we remain independent of these big money interests, and that we don't become corrupted like the Democratic Party, which is now completely controlled by corporate interests. And you think about it, as we recently found at COP26, those money interests are not interested in saving humanity from climate change. They're not interested in ending the oppression of the global South, or of ending the caste and racist system we have here in the US. So Pacific is going to be a voice against elite power, against empire. Then it's, then we really have to resist these big money interests, and that includes foundation grants. So we must develop shows that attack the myths that sustain the corporate market legitimacy believed by, the establishment and the middle level establishment in particular, who really operate the state machinery. And we need to promote shows that speak truth to power. And so, I think we need more shows like Project Censored and Hard Knock Radio, which are, my favorite shows at KPFA. And I'd like to quote one of my favorite authors, if that's okay, Cornel West. He says, "The oppressive effect of the prevailing market moralities leads to a form of sleepwalking from womb to tomb, with the majority of citizens content to focus on private careers and be distracted with stimulating amusements. They have given up any real hope of shaping the collective destiny of the nation. Sour cynicism, political apathy, and cultural escapism become the pervasive options." And I think he really hit the nail on the head for what's going on right now. We need to show that we can break the public out of their sleep, and I think George Carlin said, the reason that we call it American Dream is because you have to be asleep to believe it. So what we really need is Pacifica to be an alarm, to be a wake up to the public on issues of caste and race, of corporate and nonprofit foundations, corruption of the political system, and the ability of the business party with its two branches of Democrats and Republicans to deflect their inability to deflect the upcoming disasters that are approaching. So am I up on my time, or is
Yes,
yeah.
that's your
All right.
time, Mr. McFadden, but it was well worth every second. I'm glad that I have my own problems with Cornell, but he knows his stuff. I'd like to go to KPFK, and I think Ms. Cruz is one of the ones
Yes, Marisol.
Yeah, Marisol.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'll be very brief. I just want to thank Grassroots Coalition, Michael, Lawrence, Janine, everyone for their support. And my vision for KPFK is to be very inclusive to all visions, to pull from various sources and styles, to have an eclectic approach towards information sharing. To be nonpartisan. If you're really trying to see how we could gather more folks to listen and tune in, we need to be very inclusive, take it to the local level and see what really matters to folks. And for that, we have to have our open minds and see what's really affecting people at home, in their pockets, in their health, and their dreams for their future. We are definitely a platform, and I think we could really gather a lot of support by creating a space for people to come together and share their experiences. That will be a great way to have buy-in for listeners and have ownership of the stations, because at the end of the day, it really is. It's by the people for the people. So thank you so much.
Very succinct, and you hit the nail on the head. And it is wonderful to see someone a lot younger than me talking sense, because I do believe that you do make sense. So thank you very, very much. Now we'll go to KPFT and two individuals that I have had the joy, pleasure of working with over the years. It's elderhood and the generations behind us that I think make us stronger. These individuals have done some incredible work and had the voices of the people in mind when they did things. They have been remarkable in the work that they've done, both for Pacifica Fightback and KPFT, and to bring what has been happening at KPFT to the Pacifica Nation, so to speak. All the stations get to hear what we've gone through. I'm going to let the two of you decide who goes first. I don't want to do age nor brilliance, because you're both brilliant and you are of different generations, but it's up to you, Vera and Akua. I will let you decide. Akua, are you still on the?
Yes, we can go first, and she's on the board, so I think it would be great if she can go first if she's available.
They're here. I think I saw V here. Hey, darling.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't mind going first. I'll be real brief, and then so that Akua, you can take the rest of the time. As far as the future of Pacifica, I just want to say, like, Pacifica is unfortunately, undoubtedly a racist place, and this is not a place that I would bring any of my other young queer comrades to join, because it's just not safe for us. And so I just really want to ask everyone on this call to really think about your own actions and think about what you can do as individuals. Because clearly as a group, Pacifica Fightback, we are not bringing in more youth. And we're just not going to survive if we don't. Like, that's just the numbers. And so as individuals, I'd really, really like to ask y'all to think about what you can do and who you can ask to get involved and how you can facilitate that and maybe, help some younger folks become more involved with Pacifica. However to you think is the best way to do that. Please just think about that for yourselves as individuals, because I know we all have different situations and we're in like at least five different cities. And the second thing I want to say is just the time that I've been kind of sitting back and listening to how this call has been going, I've noticed so many people that, like, during the question and answer portion, so many of y'all just kind of like gave your opinions and didn't really ask questions. And I think that's really disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the moderators. It's disrespectful to the rest of the people that actually want to ask questions. And I think, unfortunately, I think that really speaks to the culture that we have, not just at Pacifica, but even carried on to Pacifica Fightback. And so we really need to think about how to make this a more welcoming place and a more fair place and a place where younger people feel comfortable bringing their voices and speaking up. Because I'm telling you right now, if I brought like even one friend to this meeting, they would be like, no, what is this? This is not questions. People are just speaking their opinions when you know you can put it in the chat, or you know you can do like sparkle fingers in the video, or you know you can do a thumbs up. It's just not respectful. So we ourselves first have to ask ourselves, what are we doing that in this group, in this Pacifica Fight Back group, we don't have any young people? How can we become more respectful to each other? How can we do better to be a comforting, inviting group? That's all I have to say. Thank you all very endlessly. I just can't thank you all enough for being here and supporting. I know it's been really, really rough the last few months. That's all I have to say. I hope it'll go overtime. Thank you.
B, thank you. Your words have always had a strong impact on me, and I work my best to do better each and every day because of you and the folks that have been trusted in my care over the years. So thank you very much for all that you just said. Akua.
Yes, thank you, PK, and thanks to Pacifica Fightback for providing this forum to give feedback about the elections. I don't know what else to say that hasn't been said. So I can add to perhaps what has been happening at KPFT and how did we get to this point. I want to remind people who've been around for a minute that many years ago, we raised issues about the systemic racism at KPFT. I remember there was a move at KPFT to succeed from Pacifica. I'm not sure how many old timers remember that. But from that move became, hey, let's just take over the Pacifica bylaws. Let's continue to start all these different groups and siphon money away from our listeners and pretend we're using that money to improve the bylaws. I say that we need to strengthen the bylaws and put in the bylaws that no group can raise private money to fight Pacifica with Pacifica listeners. It just doesn't make sense to me that this recent New Day saga, and even before then, all these different groups can raise money from the Pacifica listeners to fight Pacifica. That's where the flaw is in this. And then recently, of course, we come to find out that the New Day people, there were only 2 or 3 people in that group who were running the show. So there really was never a New Day. There was people just being operatives, and the others, I guess, were just following along, this sort of loose-knit group. However, I think it would, I think it'll be a mistake for the people around the network to not take a good look at the systemic racism at KPFT and how that energy has permeated the network over the past 15 years. That group has been involved in what was happening in New York, directly involved in going to New York and taking that station off the air and justifying it while everyone else stayed mum. I'm saying that to say because this particular election, it was intentional that our new general manager, through the advice of people that were involved on our board, took off the air 22 programs prior to the vote for the bylaws and prior to the vote for LSD members. This should not happen. That too should be in the bylaws. No manager should be able to single-handedly get rid of active programs, especially programs as it relates to communities of color, and do these kinds of things before the election. And even though we tried to get some assistance and to get this movement overturned or looked at on the national board, we had no such luck. So yeah, for us here in Houston, people are angry, they're tired, they're exhausted. We have seen our rights being violated year after year after year, and these same operatives who still exist on our board and pretend that nothing has happened. So it was very significant, the impact of taking off 22 Black and brown shows prior to the election, and they got the exact result that they wanted, and that means very few Black and brown people on the board, and especially young people. We had a great group of young folks on our slate who were running for the board. None of those people made it to the board. So there's a flaw in the bylaws, and these people know exactly what that flaw is. And again, I don't want to sound redundant, but the fact that they can raise private funds with our list, and the fact that managers can use a loophole and take shows off the air and wholesale, 22 shows right before election. Those are the kind of things that have happened here to impact impact our communities and have silenced our voices, and we are tired of it. It's just really exhausting, year after year after year, the same thing, same group of people, and it just continues. And so, yeah, we can talk about all kinds of things about Pacifica in the future, yet we cannot turn a blind eye to the systemic racism that permeates and exists, and a lot of it is coming from KPFT here in Houston, and has impacted this entire network over the past 2 decades.
PK?
I think you're muted, PK.
Yes, Nancy, did you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to make sure you weren't not muted.
Oh,
and
okay.
Paulina and I think Carolyn were on the staff.
Okay, we're not on a stack right now. We're having the panel discuss.
Yeah, we still have
Yeah, so just give,
PFW and BAI.
yeah. WBAI, we're going to start with Mimi.
Well, thank you. First of all, greetings, really gentle people. And I speak in recognition of Trans Awareness Month next week, and my pronouns are she and her, and also Indigenous Peoples Native Heritage Month. And I'm glad that we are moving from the procedural to the substantive issues. And I will read I will just make a brief opening and then read a proposal that's been in the works for some months that is relevant to WBAI in New York, but I hope stimulates the juices and may wind up being a possibility for a business model, a proposal that we really need to do two critical things, which cannot be ignored, and we do so at our peril, and that is the financial sustainability of the network. And the other component part of that is with that, the technological development to develop the kind of platforms that are responsive to people's listening habits today, and the reality that we've entered into a digital landscape, and with the diminution really of the importance of terrestrial radio. So with that, I want to say that the overall premise around the proposal is the idea of beginning to build partnerships, beginning to build consortiums of progressive media to draw upon each other, to pool resources, and politically to have a greater presence in the media landscape and prepare for the growing attacks and repression, both from the neoliberal and encroaching fascist influence relevant to the media. So if I may, this is a proposal to strengthen and redefine independent community media in the digital age. The pandemic and the resulting economic crises, coupled with the rise of new social movements and the increased growth and dominance of digital media, represents an important opportunity for legacy media organizations to partner and meet the historic challenge. The fact is that if legacy community media institutions do not diversify their media platforms and their revenues, they will not be able to meet their historic missions and will close and disappear. There are many approaches to developing a strategic partnership, but I want to mention one relevant to New York and which could be replicated in other venues. Specifically, I'm looking at a partnership between Manhattan Neighborhood Network, a cable entity, which would provide for WBAI a shared space that would help create an independent media campus. So we're talking about the issue of structure and what brings people in to create media. So we're looking at really a whole different construct. It's not a building which is there just for production purposes. It's creating an independent media campus and a community cultural center, if you will. So what we are looking towards is working with Manhattan Neighborhood Network to produce and have administrative services that would facilitate and be run 24 hours, 365 days a year. And I'm speaking as quickly as I can to get in some substantive ideas here. As part of this partnership, M&M would launch a new WBAI branded cable cast and streaming channel, thereby providing a new platform to dramatically expand WBAI's audience impact and community service. And you can add the initials of any one of the stations in this. And under this scenario, WBAI would be continued to run as usual. All executive decisions, including employment and programming decisions, would be made by WBAI Pacifica. All governing decisions would be retained by Pacifica's existing structure. M&N BAI would simply share M&N production and media facilities. This is a bold, synergistic partnership that would increase the sustainability of both organizations by diversifying distribution platforms and expanding respective audiences. WBAI can engage in on-air fundraising on M&N. WBAI producers will find new and creative opportunities and new audiences by adding video to their productions. Moreover, WBAI producers could access M&N podcast studios, distribution partners, and other technological and media capabilities and capacities to expand their voices and community engagement. For M&N, the partnership would benefit them by providing new and dynamic cable vision content, which WBAI would contribute. So there's this partnership that will allow both organizations to become more sustainable by expanding, again, audiences and impact. Moreover, it could lay the groundwork for an array of deepened relationships. Again, we're talking about building partnerships of fellow travelers, if you will, etc. And then as an initial matter, M&N would be prepared to assume the full occupancy costs of the partnership for at least a year, and on a going forward basis, ensure the occupancy costs would not be burdensome for WBAI. Occupancy costs would be capped by or pegged on a flexible pro rata basis tied to income. And I say this with the reality that WBAI is losing roughly or behind $26,000 every month. When we are close to bankruptcy, and it's not just the reality of BAI, it is the standard for the network. To be clear, the key point of the strategic partnership is to help develop long-term sustainability for BAI and M&N specifically, both individually and collectively, and to limit the day-to-day operating costs in order to help relaunch these historic organizations and to focus on key strategic and sustainability issues. There's a great many more specifics, but I will move a little bit more rapidly now. The overall goal that is reflected in these partnerships is to develop a community media campus and ecosystem, to provide meeting spaces for the exchange of ideas, for discussion of topical issues, and as prominent locations from which local and progressive media is developed both technically and with the necessary narrative skill sets that will ensure that independent, mission-driven media can grow and prosper. This new independent media partnership would emphasize and provide for broadcast on multiple platforms, which is essential: video, radio, podcasts, internet, to accommodate the different devices and listening viewing habits of youth and other audiences for media. So there's a great deal more to say, but I hope I've stimulated a couple of thoughts and ideas. And in summary, really, on this, there are many details and how this works out financially to the betterment of WBAI, and again, can be replicated at any one of the stations. But in summary, it's a model, a prototype that could be used to develop our form of media, to develop community media, one that leverages both institutions' unique local character, yet takes advantage of new distribution models and multiple platforms. Again, radio, cable, satellite, the web, to grow audience engagement, meet our prospective missions, and ensure financial sustainability. I do want to say that while there's a good deal more that I hope we will have an opportunity to talk about this as one model, it must be in the context of, and it is imperative that the national board get a grant to bring people on board who are going to arrange for a sustained and developed process of looking at this media, independent progressive media, as a business model and how it's going to survive and sustain itself, and with that develop its technical capacity and platforms to message to varying and different groups of people. So I think that it's a strategic thing for the national board to take up. It's not an ad hoc process. It has to be sustained, and there really should be the building towards an economic summit where there are requests for proposals as to how these stations are going to financially survive in the 21st century. And I maintain that certainly, and I'm open to and would encourage folks to thinking about the model of building partnerships, consortiums, combining resources, giving us a great deal more political clout in the media landscape, which absolutely our media needs with the consolidation of other media, etc. So, and just one last thing that we're doing to also at BAI to democratize and maintain democracy, and that is organizing the unpaid staff. I'm speed talking and trying to get it all in, but the unpaid staff who do the bulk of the work and are the closest to the community and actually are the gorgeous mosaic that represents the community must have an affirmative action component, must have a grievance proceeding, must have progressive discipline, and must have a real voice in maintaining and sustaining and developing the democracy of this network.
Okay.
The workers. So I just want to, we've developed a lot of plans. We're trying to contract with management around that. So we have very specifics that I hope we will have an opportunity to develop and not give short shrift to the substantive issues that we need to do in order to keep this network keeping on for another 60 plus years. So thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mimi. Next, WPFW, Lou Wolf.
Yes, good evening. I really am very appreciative to be part of this program, and I thank New Day Pacifica for educating us about the crimes that they're up to. I was very much a part of fighting Pacifica Fightback, and frankly, New Day Pacifica is still a stalking horse with all of their money. And they're four members with their huge agenda. Just look at their website. They want to corporatize our network, and they want to sell off our stations. They've said so. It's not me saying it. They've said it. Let me go on. We need to build a very strong anti-imperialist network that is clear about imperialism, not in rhetoric, in reality, in our programming, but also in our platform as a network. And I say across the network, not just WPFW, I'm saying for all of the stations. And that includes the affiliate stations as well, a lot of them on college campuses. We must, number two, we must build a platform that calls for an end to American imperialism and an end to American exceptionalism, which, by the way, is taught in every school, high school and college, and even from the pulpits of the churches and the synagogues, so that everybody seems to buy into the thought that the United States is exceptional, as Barack Obama said, and he said also, as every president has said in our history, every president since, let's say, World War II, the United States is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Their words. Every president says that. Number three, we need an end. Our networks must stand for an end to mass incarceration, an end to capital punishment. I'm working on behalf of a friend who's on death row in San Quentin. He's been there 43 years. He's innocent, and we can prove it. And so many people have been executed who were innocent, and the DNA evidence proves that they were innocent. But they can't come back and tell us that. Number four, we must stand for a stronger role, or rather a stronger demand and platform of all our stations against the rise of fascism, against the rise of racism in this country. Let's be clear here. It's not all Trump that brought that on. Racism has been in this country and in the DNA of this country going way back. It wasn't just Trump who brought that on. Lastly, I guess I have a little time to say that I'm very concerned about those in our network and different stations who are anxious to reach out for money. Yes, we all our stations need money, and to continue. But I'm worried about what we know of as dark money. Dark money, in case you don't know, is money that is coming from sources that we don't want to have any involvement with. Okay, whether that be the CIA, whether that be corporations, whether that be Jeff Bezos. I mean, he's the richest man in the world, but his money is dark money. Thank you.
Thank you all for all that you've said and all that we're thinking about. And sometimes it's a little hard to see a future that can make a difference and that inspires change and inclusiveness and fairness and diversity. We've addressed all the reasons why, but I'm just wondering if in this next half, as we have a Q&A and as we look at the things that have been said, what is our vision for a Pacifica that is based on the vision and the mission that no one has really talked about? The mission is supposed to be all the things that Mimi talked about, all the things that Akua said there, all the things that Steve and James and Marisol and Lou, you have laid out this thing that's part of the mission. But how do we get there? How do we get there? How do we make our bylaws reference that rather than our mission reference the bylaws? You know, I don't want to run a stop sign, but I want to make sure that the stop signs work for everybody. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals who have their hands up. I'm going to start with Ann Garrison. And we've been talking a little bit, chatting a little bit in the chat. Would you unmute, please?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I turned on my video, but I'm sitting in the dark, so I'm not sure. Wait, there we go. Okay, I'm sitting in the dark, which I find relaxing. You know, I heard someone complaining that this was disrespectful because not everyone was asking a question. Some people were just sharing their 2 cents. I didn't feel that way at all. But here, the only way I can ask this as a question is I'm going to throw out something I've been thinking about and ask you, what do you think of this? I think we're in a rut. We keep going through the same issues all the time, the debt, the declining membership, especially the debt every time. And I would like to see a radical step, and that would be to swap KPFK's signal with one of the NPR stations that has been interested in that for a long time. Its value for one can only decline because more and more people listen on the internet. I can't come up with numbers, but I asked Tracy Rosenberg, who knows more about this than anyone else I know. And she said that the signal swap would pay off all the debt, give everybody a chance at a new start. And at that point, I would say this shouldn't even be done unless there's a way to insist that every station live on their budget. So that's my proposal, a new start. Swap the signal, give everybody a new start, everybody stick to their budgets. Anybody else to ask a question? Does anybody else have any thoughts about that?
Would any of our panelists like to respond to that? Do you mind if I respond a little bit, Am?
Sure.
No. There are 2 things that I think are part and parcel of the generational aspect. We're not necessarily having a conversation and asking each other questions back and forth. Maybe that is what V was speaking to, but I think more than that is to know that you've listened to them, that their voices have been heard. If you speak to something else, I have a friend who does listening posts, and she says, a lot of times when we're talking, we're thinking about what we're going to say rather than what needs to be said. And that only comes from listening and responding. And that takes a little bit more time than I think that we have in this format that we're using. But the things that can be part of solution-based is part of what I've learned from my sister who worked for NASA for 40 years. If you know what the problem is and you focus on the problem, it will still be a problem. But if you start looking for solutions and you focus on the solution, there's a chance that you might, figure it out because people are putting their emphasis into the solution rather than fighting the problem. And maybe that's something that we need to think about. So I don't know whether or not that would work because that hasn't been my experience as it relates to if that would work. But I wouldn't mind being in a conversation with people who do know and to find a way to meet and to figure out so that we can offer some solutions to some of the things that have been said. I hope that gets the conversation started. Thank you so much for putting it out there. Nancy Lawrence, you're next. Unless anybody else.
Carolyn and Paulina. Yeah, Carolyn and Paulina have been on the stack.
Please, can you let
Nancy
the host run the
Lawrence.
meeting?
Paulina, I don't see your hand. Are you on the phone?
No, I'm actually on video and I did not have my hand up. But thank you, Nancy, for thinking of me. And no, I have nothing to contribute at this time. I'm listening very intently.
Okay, because
I'm
John Riley has his hand up. Adisha has her hand up. Lauren.
Please,
Did you want to respond to
let the
Ann
host
Garrison?
run the stack.
Were you talking about responding to Ann Garrison, or can you wait in the order that you're here? John?
Oh, I mean, I can respond. I would have to say that I'm against the sale of any of the stations. I think that it's not going to necessarily change things fundamentally. What the problem is that Pacifica's audience is aging and has not recruited the younger generation. And so that's the reason why we have a group of gray-haired people and hair-thinning people here. Is like, you know, we were lucky and we discovered it when it was in its heyday, and we're still here. But, you know, if we're going to really change the way things operate, we have to be where young people are, and they're doing podcasts. And if you look at like Pacifica started to do podcasting in 2003 or 4, something like that, and did it until the lawyers somehow scared them, or somehow they got scared away from doing the podcasting. And that was like an enormous issue, because that could have provided a transitional node for us to go get a somewhat younger audience. Now, the younger audience is not going to save us financially, probably, because a lot of young people are broke. But eventually, if things go halfway well for them, they'll have more resources. And even if people are broke, a lot of times, you know, poor people do contribute to Pacifica more generously than, you know, people with more means. So I think that what we need to do is something like what Mimi has been talking about, is that we need to make alliances, consortia. That doesn't mean that we merge our organizational structures, but that we, you know, provide things to each other that each other needs. So, like, for example, MNN. What does MNN need? Well, it needs viewers. That's all based on these access agreements, their contract.
That's 2 minutes, John.
What's that?
That's 2 minutes. We're
okay. Just let me have a.
Yeah, I'll let you finish. I was just letting you know.
But the thing is that these legacy media are in trouble because the new digital media is directly appealing to them. So instead of, you know, like Disney is like getting its own digital channel through the internet and bypassing these cable companies, as is Paramount, as is MSNBC, etc. So these public access stations have a limited time, you know, unless there is some alliances. And I think that it would be worthwhile to try to do more reach out and try to be on more platforms. And podcasting is one thing every Pacifica station should be doing.
Okay, let's try and I mean, I'll let you continue your thought, but let's try to keep to the 2-minute rule. One person who was up is no longer up. Did they leave? Adisa Armand, how are you? Can you unmute? You're next. Adisa?
Yes. Oh, wait a minute. There I am.
Here I am.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you again for this wonderful opportunity to hear all of the things that have been stated. And I think, I don't know if it was the gentleman before me or someone else, but I believe that all of the concerns that have been expressed are very similar in nature, and that organizing principle 101 is that when there is a problem, we organize and unite and find a solution so that the other, in this case, the protectors, will know that we are united and they cannot penetrate the wall, or they can penetrate the wall, but with our demands. I want to address something that I thought was on the table, and it says, how do we build a working class, anti-racist, anti-imperialist network? And so I wanted to share with you that I'm here because I have this passion, and I believe that the word community within our organization is the integral part of this station's life. And I believe that underrepresented communities truly need to be at this table sooner than later. And an initial core of any organization is its mission statement, and KPFA's mission statement is full of concepts that are in the process of being realized, and I feel they need to be addressed in a consistent manner. The assassination, murder of George Floyd and the COVID-19 virus trauma took advantage of what were pre-existing structural inequities, and we have all had a collective witnessing to that in these more than 18 months. And the task of building a working class anti-racism network takes hard work, commitment, and courage. And to be
about 10 seconds, Adisa.
Oh, okay. So what I would like to do is for the KPF board to address this issue of being an anti-racist network station, and that we need to begin this work internally with the board of directors, the staff must be the first in the venture of becoming anti-racist by seeking qualified trainers to accompany them, and then to invite community, the working class community, to be active participants in this important work. And so
okay, I'm gonna have to cut you off.
I'm sorry.
Finish that last statement.
Okay, so before the network, before we can become anti-racist, we have to build an anti-racist society. You just can't go and do it just like that, like clapping of your hands. And that's what I wanted to express.
Thank you very much, Adisa. And I will send you the CAB meeting for the town hall meeting, our anti-racist town hall meeting we're doing in January. Lawrence.
Thank you.
Thank you. The relatives, the working class, anti-racism and anti-imperialism are relatives, right? And those things could be the basis of augmenting the mission. Now, the whole idea of Tracy Rosenberg's name and her great ideas, which is part of the reunification of going back to trying to run the network into the ground and controlling it. I just want to say that I am completely against any station being swapped. That whole idea of what was done to WBAI is being pushed onto KPFK. So I completely disagree with any station being swapped or a repeated station, the whole concept of that. What we need to do is instead of coming up with these magic pills and over medicating people with this, with these, ideas, is we need to work and we need to put the work in order to do that. So I have a question for Mimi. Mimi, I completely associate myself with your remarks and your concepts, and I agree with them. At the Pacifica National Board, as you know, there's been pushback. WBI is in debt at the tune of $26,000 a month, but yet they're trying to impose the current WBI model onto KPFK. And the M&N proposal is something I supported for many years. How do we slap that over the finish line? How do we implement that? Taking a note out of V's suggestion, I'm asking a question. Thank you.
Well, if I may, just in a nutshell, which really hardly answers, there needs to be an opportunity for the more developed proposal in its specificity to be presented to people, to build support for it. That's one thing. And there also needs to be the idea that it is but one proposal, and it's not about just generalities about building anti-racist networks when you're not going to have a home to build them in if we don't begin to think about the financing. So the question, Lawrence, is really where that fits into the board, the national board, really taking seriously and beginning to think of and soliciting proposals, one of which would be M&N, for the financing of this precious media network going forward. So it's a long discussion, but I would really welcome, other than this very truncated, which I understand, possibility for substantive ideas being put out, another session where we could really solicit proposals and really vet them and ferret out the questions and concerns about whether they meet the conceptual standards for creating anti-racist and anti-imperialist programming and so on.
Okay.
So I think it's a longer thing, and I think we need another session. Is really where that was.
Yes. The next person on is Malcolm. Malcolm? Okay.
Yeah, it's such a great name. You got to say it twice sometimes. Peace to everybody.
Malcolm. How you doing?
Peace and love. Thank you. A few things. I'm gonna try and whittle it down.
Because hold on just 1 second. I'm just gonna say to everybody, 15 minutes more and we're supposed to be finished. So I know that we're going to go a little over, but I don't want to miss anybody that's on this call that has their hand up. So Malcolm, please.
Okay, I'll go quick. First of all, Sheila Hanukkah, thank you for throwing that sign up a few times. That said, there's plenty of BIPOC youth that would definitely give some support to the station. Marisol said something earlier about being nonpartisan. I think that's quite important because as somebody else said, I think it was James or Steve, somebody earlier said something about the Democratic Party and the left be taken over by a corporate body, if you will. It's a damn shame that I got to go see Dr. Peter McCullough on Fox News. I mean, there's some real issues when that's the case, when that's the way it's been sort of twisted. Listener call in, Rachel said that earlier too. I mean, there used to be a program on BAI, Hugh Hamilton, a few other folks that you could call in, and people very much so look forward to that because they could hear their peers on the radio. That's something that I can assure you would bring people back to the air. And just in a nutshell, speaking of the vision, what's got people deterred in this age is lies and fear is what I feel it is, right? So the way that you actually bring back people into the fold is the truth and love, right? So the reality is WBAI was always a station I could go to get the truth about so many things. And the fact that we're in the midst of this thing we calling a pandemic out here now, and we don't hear much more than just a few hosts speaking to that issue very specifically and very pointedly and very resourced and with extremely credible sources, and that sort of it gets wiped away by hearing some semblance of what we're calling the news these days. I think that that people can't be scared of that truth, because like somebody was saying in the chat earlier, this it's not enough to be anti-racist anymore. You got to be anti-fascist, and fascism is coming from both sides. Unfortunately, the two sides of the same coin of the Democratic and Republican Party. And if
10 seconds.
If people can't see that at this point, you know whose music that is, but if people can't see that at this point, we're in real trouble. So I would urge all of you, it's about the truth, however hard that hits, and whoever don't like it, that's their business.
Thank you so much, Malcolm.
No doubt.
I think we're talking about alternative facts. Michael Novick?
I think that we're talking about solutions for Pacifica. I put in the chat, I think that the solution for Pacifica is to offer solutions on our airwaves for the problems people are experiencing. So, I think if we had a parenting show and a childcare show and a gardening show and a labor show and, a show about what's going on in public education, if we had a show about how people who are in the military are being treated while they're in the military and when they come out of the military, with solutions that, are being advocated for and developed at the grassroots level by the people experiencing those problems. I think that's the kind of content that will attract listeners. I think that NPR sells itself as people feel good about themselves because they listen to NPR. And they're satisfied with that, with just listening. I think we have to attract an audience of people who don't feel very good about what's happening to them and want to do something about it, want to solve the problems. And I think that, the grassroots labor organizers, rank and file labor organizers, I think Black Lives Matter, I think, the young Jews that are opposing Israeli aggression. I think the movement here in Los Angeles, Muslim ARC, it's an anti-racist collaborative. There's Muslims for Progressive Values. There's a lot of grassroots organizations. The people you heard are from the start of this, from the American Indian movement and different indigenous struggles, and all of them are actually trying to solve the problems that they're facing with organization, with movement, with activities. And I think that putting those kinds of solutions on the air is what will solve. I think that's what will solve our problems, because we'll have the audience and the impact that we need to have. Thanks.
And do you mind if I let Nancy and Paulina go next, because I don't think they've spoken at all.
No, not at all.
Nancy Lawrence, go ahead. Can you unmute?
Okay. Well,
no, Nancy Lawrence.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Nancy Lawrence, you have your hand up?
Unmute.
Unmute, Nancy.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now I can hear you.
Okay, Anna, thank you for this opportunity. I'm with the Peace and Freedom Party, and in the Peace and Freedom Party, we have been getting for the past year or more a lot of young people coming into a party. We used to have to struggle to register people. They're joining with our party lifting a hand. We must be doing something right maybe now that we weren't doing before, or maybe a lot of the Bernie people got disillusioned with the Democratic Party. And we have the values of socialism against imperialism, racism, capitalism, and ecological destruction. And, maybe, the fact that some of the young people are joining the Peace and Freedom Party, we had to find out what, and I'm having a meeting tomorrow with the Peace and Freedom Party, but we're going to have to find out what's attracting them to us, which might be helpful to Pacifica. Another idea that I'm thinking of is, as some of the callers earlier brought up, the idea of local programming, which I think we need to have local news groups giving news. So when there's a police brutality or ecological destruction here in Los Angeles, for instance, we can not only report on it, but link with various struggles around the world, because we're I believe in being internationalists, anti-imperialist and capitalism. We got to link up with struggles around the world. So you have an indigenous people, American Indian movement or some other group, and fighting against global climate chaos. And we can link up with indigenous people in the Amazon or elsewhere that are fighting the same battles and fighting capitalism and fighting for a new world that's for both or for other living beings as well as humans. So I mean that this is what socialism should look like. You know, I consider myself an eco-socialist. But anyhow, I think we need to have a lot of programs with that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Paulina, long time no see, sister.
That's right. Good to be here. I wanted to pick up on where Ann Garrison left off. I don't think that the idea of a signal swap is just some idea held by only some. This has been taken up around Pacifica on and off with obviously lots of pushback, because what a signal swap means, it doesn't mean to sell a station. It means to exchange the signal, right, with a smaller, let's say smaller reach signal. It would also mean to switch the frequency of the signal. Obviously lots of pushback on an idea like that. The reason why these ideas come up as perhaps it would not be a temporary solution, because we all know that let's just say, okay, let's talk about KPFK, for instance. KPFK right now has the potential to reach all of Southern California. Do we do that? Of course we do not, right? We know if we look at our cumes, the number of people that listen to us, it's very, very small in comparison to the actual signal area that we occupy. It's absolutely painful to think, okay, we need to, the way to go is to swap with NPR. They're waiting, right? They're chomping at the bit to get that. Right. We all understand that. So when these
10 seconds,
absolutely proposals come up, well, I want to see KPFK and Pacifica come back to where we were back in the days, the glory days of labor movements, of anti-racist and movements, pro-immigrant movements, where the millions of people were in the street, and Pacifica was in the street with them, and we were raising money. Thank you very much.
BK, are you muted?
PK, you're muted.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. I was coughing and I didn't want anybody to hear me. Allergies. Rachel, and then we will kind of close with Ann and Elizabeth Milos. Rachel? You'll have to unmute, Rachel.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that I think that Mimi mentioned MNN, and I agreed with it a few years ago when it was raised. I think the ultimate thing, I don't know too much more about the other stations, but I know that all the stations are in their own kind of troubles. I do know that because of the composition of the national board, specifically the members from BAI, that I am deeply concerned about the political direction of not only BAI, but Pacifica as a whole. And I will say that because BAI has been in debt for so long, for such an amount of money, that I and many other people involved in BAI, whether they're producers or unpaid staff or paid staff or listener members, we have decided that if we don't soon and very soon get the solution that we know that we need from the Pacifica National Board and the local station board and the management of BAI, that we will come together. We've already started meeting to come together to formulate a plan, if you will, to take over the station, because the people in power are less powerful than with the people. We have greater power than the people in power do. And it's been done before, and it will have to happen again, because we are dealing with people's lives. And when that is on the radio, when that is not on the radio, that's not okay. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ann. glad to hear
I'm
from
sorry, I just want to say that if she was talking about a physical takeover, nobody here is talking about that.
Okay.
Me?
Yes, you're next.
I never ever suggested selling a station. I suggested a signal swap for KPFK, which is really having KPFK is not using its huge signal to reach a lot of people. And also I've been hearing the same thing said year after year after year. We have to improve the programming. Improving the programming will attract more listeners. That will solve our financial problems. That's not even necessarily true. The fact that you have a larger audience does not mean that you're going to make more money. I was just trying to suggest something that would give everybody a new start without all this debt hanging over us and being the main thing that we have to struggle with all the time with the other side that wants to drive us into bankruptcy and so forth. Polina, I wanted to ask, I did not quite understand what you said. Did you say you were against the signal swap? You thought we should do what Pacifica used to do, or I didn't quite understand.
I said that the signal swap option has been discussed in more than one occasion. I think it's misunderstood, is what I said. And that I would, I would say, I would hope that it is not our only option. I do understand why the option periodically gets put on the table as a solution, but that's pretty much all I was saying. I think because it's been part of the conversation, it might still need to be part of the conversation. Is all I say.
Okay. Do you have any other ideas for paying off the debt?
PK, can I have 30 seconds after Elizabeth, please? Lawrence.
Polina, are you finished?
I asked Polina if she had any other ideas for paying off the debt.
It's not a
But
two-way
not in the short term.
I'm sorry. Wait. Whoa.
It's not a two-way
Can we have a
conversation. Aaron.
stack here? What is this?
Yeah, I just requested
Okay.
30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, you're next, Lawrence. Thank you, Ann. You're next.
Thank you. So the whole idea, me and Serene were on the national board when that was discussed, and it's more complicated than the simplicity that it's being told. I heard that all the debt of the network could be eliminated if we swap KPFK. Now, I don't want to say that the KPFA protectors and other people of their ilk have been trying to secede from the network. So why don't you just go along with them? I don't know what you mean. I'm completely against dividing our network. We need to keep it together. Thank you, PK.
All right, that's 30 seconds. Serene?
Okay, so thank you. So I'm going to speak for people who are not here to speak for themselves. And if they want to correct me, they will, and I'll share that with you. The Justice and Unity slate is not working on a, quote, takeover. Justice and Unity is strongly in favor, has been strongly in favor in media partnerships with MNN, and MNN is Manhattan Neighborhood Network, which is the free cable access service that is provided. It's a national law about monies from cable companies funding community media. And there's one in each borough in New York City, at least, as far as I know. I mean, definitely New York City. I'm not sure about the other counties. We've long been in favor of partnership. We have not, in recent times, had a group discussion about the proposals that were discussed either by Mimi or by John, although I am familiar with those prospects and I think they should be developed and brought to the group. But we need to be clear about when people are speaking for themselves and when they're speaking for or on behalf of the group. And I'm not on the board, but I know people who have not been consulted on either of those things. Thank you.
Okay, we are at 9:03. And as always, I love the opportunity to be part of conversations that move the needle forward. And I am hoping that we've done that tonight. There's one more hand that just went up, but we are at the end. Eleanor, is it Eleanor? Elizabeth? From WPAI?
Eleanor.
Okay. Eleanor.
Eleanor Elizabeth.
Okay. Yes.
We were originally going to be talking about the past election and future elections. And I'd like us to be thinking about all the various things that went wrong with this election that were not fixed. And there's no way of knowing how the election would have gone if it had been done properly. No way to put that back, short of a do-over, which of course we can't have a do-over. What makes anyone think that the next time is going to be any different? There's no consequences when something goes terribly wrong. When somebody uses the wrong email list, when someone sends out too many of one thing, on one group does, or when another group isn't heard, when things are cut, there's no actual consequences.
Okay.
How do we get to what we want when there are no consequences for what has already happened?
That's right. That's a question that I've been asking for 55 years of my life, since I was 14. And just a short pitch, hindsight 2020 with a question mark. We're having some of the same problems decades and decades out. Should I give up because it's difficult and a hard hill to climb, and just let it sink into a cesspool? Or, well, let me just say this. The two bylaw amendments that they tried to do, they lost. So that means that they don't have as much power, but we have to realize that they cheat and we don't. We try and be fair and equitable and try to play by the rules, but the rules keep changing and they keep moving the bar. So I like your question, because we have to deal with that every day of our lives across the spectrum. Having a man like we did in the White House for 4 years shows us that we don't always get our way. And most of the time, it's those of us who are marginalized and disenfranchised to begin with. We've got to change systems, and that's not going to happen overnight. So we have to do it in pockets. There's a part of me that just wants to walk away and say, I'm done, but I can't, because I really do have hope, because I look at some of the people that I've worked with that are on this call that I have so much love for, but respect, and I trust them. And then there are those where that trust is not there. I don't want to give up, Eleanor. That's kind of what it boils down to me. And I'm going to try and give my best efforts to making a difference for as long as I can. And hopefully, no, not hopefully, over time, I think that there can be more of us than there are of them. And once we start doing that, we will make a difference in what is happening. We put up about 200 members. We raised money for about 200 people, young people, to become members. But they are looking at it and wondering, are we going to stay the course or are we going to give up? And for them, I refuse to give up. Thomas O'Rourke, can we just say 5 more minutes before we end?
I'll be very brief, about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you. I I support the idea of regional, like communal regional media production centers, sort of what I heard Mimi Rosenberg saying, sort of hardwired to each other and affiliates and internationally abroad, but should locally probably be linked to schools in some way and somehow thinking as a vocational training and apprenticeship program to solve not just volunteer labor with credits given, but also people scouting out talent. Debt in Pacifica has been here since I've been associated with it. Everyone talks about the next financial crisis is the one that's going to break the network. I don't see it as happening yet. The fact is people shoulder on. Maybe fewer people can get paid. That's just how it would have to be. You need to maintain the structure and everyone's volunteer. I don't know. Otherwise you end up, everyone's tempted to sell out to the to corporate underwriters, or, as subtle as they can be, or, or not. And finally, anti-racism to me needs to be accompanied always and mentioned as a stock phrase with anti-capitalism, because there will always be racism under capitalism. Capitalism demands others that it can divide the working class among, and it will always find them: immigrants, foreign, native, immigrant,
10 seconds.
Racial, religious, ethnicity, etc. So anti-racism without anti-capitalism is it's kind of moral preaching rather than a serious attempt at winning the working class and lock, stock, and barrel as a multiracial entity. So, obviously understanding their individual struggles, but understanding that the only way forward is a unified working class message. And Pacifica needs to get on the ball with that.
Well, I totally agree with you that anti-capitalism and anti-racist go hand in hand, which is why internalized oppression wins every once in a while, because people are bought for so little in supporting that. They get a few more dollars more than maybe the next person, and so they work against their own oppression. That's a long conversation that we need to have. I'd like to put up the last poll, if that's possible. And again, thank everybody for being on. We're still left with 3/4 of our audience. And I think that says a lot about what people want to hear and what we want to say.
I don't think the poll is going to happen. I have to get back on my other computer. And
all right. We'll work it. Thinking through, Janine is right. It was an idea that we came up with this week. I admit that I kind of started it because I think we're in need of data of who's coming, who's here, why they're here, what they're willing to support, what they aren't willing to support. I think those are data points that we need to understand. And maybe you can be part of that conversation as we go forward. I'm going to put this back in the hands of our initial host, Mike Novak. And I just want to say thank you. I love partnering with you, and I am grateful for the opportunity to seek a way in which we can make this station better for all. And so thank you. So I give it back to you, Michael.
okay, thanks, PK. I think we are going to wrap it up at this point. I'm sorry about the technical problems I had with Zoom, but if I had been able to shift the hosting to somebody else, I would have. So we will be back in touch with people. I think that, check out pacificafightback.org, which is our website. Check out, you can email us at pacificafightback@gmail.com. If you want to join, we have an outward-facing email list. It's not very high volume. You can send an email, a blank email to SYMPA, SYMPA, at lists.riseup.net. And in the subject line, just put subscribe Pacifica Fightback. Pacifica Fightback is all one word. And you'll get a confirmation email from riseup.net and respond to that. You'll be on our email list. And thank you all. There's still 70 people on the call, and we appreciate the input we did get from people in the times that we had the opportunity to share. And just to let everybody know that the KPFK local station board is doing a town hall by Zoom next Saturday. And the KPFK local station board will also have its report to the listener on KPFK and kpfk.org this Monday evening at 9 p.m. Pacific time. So I didn't realize that's pretty late on the East Coast, but it'll be archived on kpfk.org, and that'll be some opportunity to address some of these same issues directly into governance as opposed to at a distance. So thanks, everybody, and thanks for all our presenters.
Could you give us a little time to read the chat before you end the call?
Okay, sure. I think the chat will get saved. It's saved as part of the recording.
People can save it themselves too.
Yeah,
It
you
takes
should be able.
forever.
Yeah, I think it is.
Is the recording going to be available to us all?
Yes.
Yes, we'll might have to do some editing. We'll see because of some of the glitches, but we'll try to get it up on the website or on YouTube within a week or so.
And you could copy the chat. You could copy and then paste it to an email.
Forever it crawls very slowly, so that doesn't really work.
Yeah, that was pretty fast, at least on my computer. All right.
Our computers are different.
At the very bottom of the
everyone
chat,
can
there's a
save the
little
chat.
3 dots. There's 3 dots at the very bottom on the chat. If you click on the 3 dots, you click a button, it says save chat, and you got it.
Yeah, it gets saved as a text file. The whole thing gets saved.
It's right next to the smiley face in the area where you write in the chat. It's to the right, the 3 dots. It's not next to the smiley face.
It depends on what type of are you on a laptop, a pad. Some people are on the phone. It varies, but we will save the chat. It is being saved on the cloud by Zoom. So,
and we'll put it on the website too, right, Michael? Fightback.
I'm not sure if we necessarily want to put the whole chat on the website, but we'll figure out a way that people can see it.
Keep in mind the working class is the ruling class.
I say educate the. I say educate.
Malcolm.
Okay. I say educate the ruling class. The working class is already oppressed.
No doubt. Just stay positive and tell the truth, people. The folks will come.
Thank you, Sheila, for your beautiful sign there. Thank you.
Thank you all for working.
Thank you, Sister PK, brothers and sisters. Good night. Eleanor, good night.
Good night.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, PK.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks. Thank you, PK and Michael.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for all the planners. I'm going to try to end the call.